12 people have died in a stampede at a religious festival in India. Could a simple blood test help diagnose dementia and offer hope to millions? Back to the Future, after 22 years after Concorde tore through the skies, a new supersonic jet breaks the sound barrier.
How old are you?
28.
Oh.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm 29.
And the nation's favourite scrappy heroine is back. The new Bridget Jones movie premieres in Leicester Square this evening. I wonder if Rachel Reeves likes Bridget Jones. Maybe
Who
we
doesn't
can
like Bridget
It's
Jones?
true, it's true. She's making a speech a bit later on green shoots, growth, etc., etc., etc. Here's Mara's report.
Labour's plan for takeoff. The Chancellor Rachel Reeves is expected to welcome Heathrow's expansion when she unveils Labour's vision for growth in a major speech this morning. She'll also reveal plans to create Europe's Silicon Valley between Oxford and Cambridge, with a blueprint to improve infrastructure across the region.
It's great that the Chancellor is focusing on growth in a key part of the UK, Oxford and Cambridge. It's the home to many UK life science companies, and providing the infrastructure to support the growth of those companies through transport announcements and water announcements will give a real boost to our sector.
Plans to redevelop the area around Manchester United's Old Trafford Stadium and expand Gatwick and Luton airports could also be confirmed in the speech. Sir Keir Starmer said the wider plans would kick down the barriers to building, clear out regulatory weeds and allow a new era of British growth to bloom.
What I want to see from the Chancellor's speech today is her really focusing on economic growth. It is a really difficult time for businesses at the moment. They are hurting. They're going to have significant national insurance tax increases in just a couple of weeks at the beginning of April. So we really want to see actions to mitigate against that and give them opportunities to grow.
Despite the government's strong words, it will take time, possibly decades, to get spades in the ground for some projects. And the Conservatives say the biggest barrier to growth is the Chancellor herself and what they call a job-destroying budget.
They'd spent 6 months talking the country down, and now they've decided that's not the right approach.
Literally, they've done a 180. So the tone was so kind of down and gloomy, wasn't it? And then, like you say, suddenly it's this boosterism, everything's fantastic, look what's happening. And there are some lines in that op-ed from the Prime Minister in the Times this morning where essentially you say things are fantastic, we've come through it. And the question is, do the public feel that way? Because if they don't, then they're just words. So today, Rachel Reeves has a really big job on her hands. Not only does she need to convince the public that things are going to get better because of her initiatives and her policies, but also she needs to really persuade businesses, investors, that the UK is really kind of on the up and facing something positive. So she's going to say in her speech at 10 a.m. this morning, she's going to talk about the Oxbridge Arc, what they call the Oxbridge Arch, where essentially the commute between Oxford and Cambridge is about 2.5 hours, despite it being about 66 minutes apart. And what she's saying is that is not sustainable if we are going to try and create this kind of Silicon Valley-style investment area in that place to try and bring in the best talent, the best researchers. So she wants to improve that commute, improve the transport between those two hubs, and also make it more affordable for people to live there. We know it's some of the most expensive places in the UK to live. That can then attract people who actually can afford to live there and research and do those kinds of AI or life sciences research and innovation that we so desperately need. And also she's going to say, for too long, we have accepted low expectations, accepted stagnation and accepted the risk of decline. We can do so much better. Low growth is not our destiny, but growth will not come without a fight. So she's trying to say it's going to be tough, but we can do this. Now, what's really interesting is, I said in that report, the kind of things that she's going to outline. We have not yet had the solid confirmation that she is going to welcome that expansion of Heathrow Airport, that third runway. There's been huge amounts of reporting and speculation, but they have still not solidly confirmed confirmed that yet. We'll see if we get that at 10 a.m. this morning. And really, the crunch moment will be the 26th of March, when the OBR will publish its forecasts in relation to these projects. Now, if their forecasts say everything's going to be fabulous, we're going to have all this great growth, then she's going to say, look, I've done it. However, their forecasts are slightly disappointing, that could be a really, really big moment of reckoning for Rachel Reeves. So 26th of March, mark it in your diary.
Yeah, Andy Burnham's not going to be very happy about some of this stuff, is he? No. Stay in bed this morning, Mr Mayor. Now, shortly after 8, I'll be joined by the Business Secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, and the Shadow Financial Secretary, Gareth Davies. And we will, of course, bring you the Chancellor's speech live just after 10 o'clock this morning. Meantime, at least 12 people have died and many more are injured in a stampede at a religious festival in northern India. Neville Lazarus has more for us. Hello to you, Neville. What happened?
Okay, this was a surge of hundreds of millions of people that arrived at this confluence of the holy river Ganga and Yamuna. Now, this very narrow strip of land, which is supposed to be the most sacred part of the Ghats along the river Ganga, people wanted to bathe out there. Now that we've been there, we've reported from there, we've seen that it can only take about a few hundred people, but you had these hundreds of thousands of people. The government has estimated about 100 million people will converge today and tomorrow. Today being a very auspicious day, one of the 6 auspicious days in this 45-day celebration. And early in the morning, the surge of crowds, there was poor crowd management by the administration, security, which led to a stampede, and devotees broke barriers, and there was trampled over people who had already converged at this point. Now, the government has said that they are back in control of the situation. The sort of bathing ritual has restarted, but a lot of criticism of the organisation and the poor crowd management. This event is a showcase of Prime Minister Modi and the state government, which is ruled by his own party. An estimate 400 million devotees from not only from the country but across the world are supposed to converge for this 45-day celebration. But this very untoward and unsavoury event that has taken place does bring a sort of a dark spot on this event that will continue till the 26th of February.
For now, thank you. Rest of today's news for you now is Gareth.
Yes, good morning. Turn our attention to the Bishop of Liverpool, who has denied allegations of misconduct made against him by 2 women. In a statement after Channel 4 first reported the claims, the Right Reverend Dr. John Perambaleth said he consistently denied them and had complied with any church investigation. Former Labour MP and Minister Lord Peter Mandelson is expected to be confirmed as the UK's new ambassador to the United States. Reports suggest that the role still has to be formally signed off by President Trump, but agreement is expected. Police chiefs has warned that resources required to enforce the ban on XL bully dogs is placing forces under a huge burden. Since the ban came into effect last February, millions of pounds have been spent on vet bills and kennelling.
We did anticipate that there would be an increase in burden for policing, but it's fair to say that the increase in burden has been very substantial. The kennelling and the veterinary costs alone have been in excess of £25 million. That doesn't account for what will no doubt be in excess of £1 million in overtime of officers and staff that have been incurred. It doesn't account for forces having to buy specialist vehicles, equipment, enhance the training capabilities.
22 years after Concorde made its last flight, an American-made passenger jet has now broken the sound barrier. The company behind the XB-1 says they hope to resume commercial supersonic flights within the next decade. That could cut the journey time from London to New York to 3.5 hours. And a planet almost 6 times the size of Earth and 20 light years away has been found to have conditions that could support life. Astronomers at the University of Oxford have described the planet as a so-called super-Earth and say it's one of the closest to ours that could be habitable.
He always comes with good news. You've got particularly good news this morning. Good morning.
I have. It's a blood test for dementia, Kay. That's really exciting because at the moment around a third of people don't get a diagnosis, and even those that do have a bit of a rough and ready one, a memory test and MRI brain scans that don't necessarily distinguish from other brain conditions that cause memory problems and don't distinguish between the different kinds of dementia. Essential if new treatments are coming down the tracks. And that's why people are so excited about a blood test that the first patients are being accepted for.
Can you name these animals? Can you name this one?
Stephanie struggles with her words these days.
This one's a high, I cannot say it, no, I can't say that word.
Her mum had Alzheimer's disease and doctors think she may face the same problems with thinking and processing.
I just don't remember anything. It just gone. I don't know if I could have some sort of tablets to take. If I take a tablet and that starts it and it keeps my memory keeping my brain really still, working and remembering.
Stephanie is now one of the first to take part in a new study of a simple blood test that could diagnose dementia in its early stages. The Blood Biomarker Challenge will look at a series of proteins thought to be hallmarks of different forms of the disease, including Alzheimer's. Several thousand patients will be invited to take part, with the aim of having an NHS-verified blood test within 5 years.
Just 2 in every 100 patients with Alzheimer's disease currently gets a formal diagnosis, either with a specialist brain scanner or a sample of fluid taken from their spines. The problem is, at the moment, the NHS doesn't have enough machines or trained staff, and that's why a blood test could make all the difference.
A cheap and accurate diagnostic test is all the more important now that new drugs can slow the progress of dementia. So far, they're too costly for the NHS, but more are coming.
There are a whole load of other drugs under development that are likely to come, be licensed and potentially available on the NHS over the next few years. Now, those drugs are suitable for people who have fairly early levels of memory impairment, so we need to get the diagnosis right to see if people are eligible and will benefit from those drugs.
Just under 1 million people in the UK have some form of dementia. Many wait years for a diagnosis, if they get one at all.
Dementia is the UK's biggest killer, and what we know at the moment is that many people are not getting a diagnosis. About a third of people in this country do not get a diagnosis. But the Blood Biomarker Challenge is about revolutionising the diagnostic pathway, and the blood test is a key part of that.
If you can copy this cube.
For patients like Stephanie, a proper diagnosis will help her to get support and perhaps future treatment to live well now and into the future.
So when?
Yeah, within 5 years. They reckon they could get a readout from this trial much earlier than that. And that's really important because these new treatments are coming down the tracks. They don't want to be in a situation where you've got treatment, but you can't find the right patients to get the right treatment. That would be terrible news for everybody living with dementia and their families. And that's why they're going to really push ahead with this trial to get those answers soon.
OK, for now, thank you. Thanks very much, Charles. Let me tell you about the opera star Wyn Evans. He's left Strictly Come Dancing's live tour. His departure comes just days after he apologised for a crude remark he made during the launch event about one of his female colleagues. Saba's here. What's going on?
Good morning, Kay. Well, Wyn Evans, as you mentioned there, star of the Go Compare advert from Strictly Come Dancing, the most recent season, he is now stepping back from his radio presenting gig and also from the Strictly Come Dancing tour following what he describes as his inappropriate actions. Now, this comes days after a video emerged from the Mail on Sunday, which shows Evans making an inappropriate comment to a woman. And this was at the launch of the Strictly Come Dancing tour. Now, in a statement, he has said, "I'm deeply sorry for the pain my inappropriate actions have caused and plan to take this time for some self-reflection." And he said that he will be stepping back to prioritise his well-being. Now, in a show of solidarity, his professional dance partner, Katia Jones, reposted the video on social media with the words, "Let's show some humanity and consideration," adding that she will also miss Evans. Now, viewers may remember that the pair went viral some months ago after a video showed
Katia Jones rather awkwardly moving Evan's hand from her way, something that they said at the time was a joke. Now, the BBC have said that they won't be commenting on the wider matter further. Strictly Come Dancing have said that they don't tolerate such behaviour on tour. So it really does look like that certainly for the foreseeable, the next coming weeks and months, we won't be seeing Wyn Evans on the stage, on the TV, and hearing him on our airwaves for now.
OK, for now. Thank you, Saba. Thank you. Let's take you to the US now, where the Trump administration has been intensifying its crackdown on illegal immigrants. Law enforcement agencies have been told to carry out large-scale raids on 3 cities every week. Our US correspondent James Matthews reports.
Look at Chicago. It looks a little different under Donald Trump. Go to the south side and the streets are more empty than usual. There's a reason for that. They're calling Chicago ground zero for migrant arrests, a city targeted first in Trump's deportation drive.
It's never this quiet. Usually people are always walking up and down.
In this Hispanic neighborhood, they tell the migrant story of a community kept indoors and of streets empty. People retreating to the shadows for fear of what they're calling here collateral arrest.
My mom, she's scared to come out, and if anything, if she does get deported and everything, it's gonna be really hard.
She's just scared to go out there. She has more anxiety going out there. It's like I was saying, that she might get picked up somewhere else from work or around where we're living.
They don't normally keep the gates shut at this migrant support centre.
We're noticing pickup trucks. They're using a lot of different cars that you can't tell whether or not they're, ICE agents, whether they're, police.
This is an open house for immigrants in the area, but immigration raids have altered the routine. Here we met Oliver. He came to America from Venezuela, has a work permit, and has been working in construction, not currently.
There are rumours about migrants, and I'm scared that they might catch me, deport me. My family depends on me.
Here in New York City this morning, we are getting the dirt bags off these streets.
This was Kristi Noem, America's new Secretary of Homeland Security. She joined a migrant raid in New York. They are expanding the map. US immigration enforcement has been publishing totals for the arrests that they're making. The figures are up on the daily average during Joe Biden's final year. It's the measure that matters in government by numbers. It is applauded by much of America, the crackdown and its choreography. Not so much in the community's centre stage. James Matthews, Sky News in Chicago.
Let's have a quick look what's happening as far as the papers are concerned this morning. Should we start in with the Mirror saying that Wyn Evans has been axed from the Strictly Live tour for using a vulgar term? That story also appears on the front of the Sun, which leads with Evans' apology. And lots of the papers are looking ahead to the Chancellor's speech this morning, including The Telegraph, which predicts Rachel Reeves will back expansion at Heathrow. You don't say. Gatwick and Luton. The Chancellor's plans for the economy also make the front of The Guardian this morning, the paper looking at her pledge to create Europe's Silicon Valley between Oxford and Cambridge. The Mail focuses on the Chancellor's critics who've urged her to stop punishing businesses with anti-growth measures. Weather for you. Here we go. The next few days look mainly fine, but the weekend will bring spells of wind and rain, mostly dry out there now with patches of frost and fog. Northern parts will see showers through the morning. Still to come on The Breakfast Show for you here on Sky News, we meet a unit of Ukrainian prisoners who've chosen the battlefield over more time behind bars. The jet, tipped to be the next Concorde, breaks the sound barrier on its first test flight.
How old are you?
28.
Oh.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm 29.
Bridget Jones is back for the fourth and final time. We'll have everything on the film ahead of its world premiere this evening in Leicester Square.
Once almost lost, these denizens of the deep are back.
The problem for these whales is global warming. Water temperatures are rising.
We're worried that the animals are actually starting to starve.
Deadly and outdated. What do you think should happen to the net?
I would like to see them go.
I'm Nicole Johnston, Sky's Asia correspondent, based here in Beijing.
A towering monument to the China dream and its demise.
From one end of this country to the other, China is littered with real estate that's falling apart.
China is facing a tsunami of the elderly.
We have to work as long as health allows, otherwise, no money.
China is under pressure to pay for the pensions of 500 million retirees. I've reported on a wide range of stories from around the world.
Mass protests forced the president to flee.
The sight of the president's private swimming pool only reinforces to Sri Lankans the great divide here between rich and poor.
Aid groups say Gaza is now the world's most dangerous place to be a child.
The Israeli army has raided towns and villages all over the West Bank.
These tunnels run all over Gaza. The Gaza Strip is ridden with them. A referendum designed to unite the country has only deepened its divide.
Sydney's floodplains underwater again.
This is the third or fourth time in the 18 months that their homes have gone under.
Sky News, the full story first.
It may seem like a gimmicky toy, but it is part of the global race between the United States and China for new technology. This elite engineering designed to humour and to help us.
Mandatory evacuation, you must leave!
For many people, Harvey is far from over.
People here believe the water will be this deep for weeks.
I'm Greg Milam, and I'm Sky's Chief North of England correspondent.
Are you trying to run me over, Sir Philip?
No, go away.
Look like it, sir. Will you respond to those who made accusations, Sir Philip?
Can you go away?
Sky News, the full story first.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Scotland has scrapped plans to introduce a national care service, sparking fears for the future of social care across the rest of Britain. A Sky News survey of care providers suggests that councils are already cutting back hard, and in some cases, care is being cancelled altogether. Let's ask Sir Ed Davey, leader of the Liberal Democrats, what he makes of all of that. Hello to you, Sir Ed. You were a carer for most of your life. What are your thoughts on this latest news?
I'm still a carer, actually. I'm really worried about this latest news. I read the story that Sky has of Mr and Mrs Carson and Livingston, who have had their care, which they rely on, being removed with no discussion. And it looks like the SNP government are failing tens of thousands of people across Scotland, I'm afraid across the whole United Kingdom, with Labour's refusal to act quickly on social care and actually making it worse with the rise in national insurance. I think things are going from bad to worse. I didn't think that would happen. The Conservatives left the health service and our care system in a disastrous state. Labour's failure to act is making it worse, and councils and millions of people are really struggling.
Yeah, you're referring, of course, to Nick Martin's excellent piece earlier in the week featuring Angela and Graham. Angela told us that she doesn't exist, that if she wasn't here anymore, it wouldn't matter. How can people feel that way in 21st century Britain?
It's tragic, isn't it? And my heart goes out to Mrs and Mrs Carson, but they're like tens of thousands of others in Scotland and hundreds of thousands across our country, where care is being taken away from disabled people, from elderly people who've had it in the past and it's now no longer there. And then there's loads of people, even many more, who are waiting for assessments for care, to get the care that they need, and it's not there. And what makes me so cross about this is that there was a package put forward in 2014. Liberal Democrat ministers put it forward. It was properly funded, and then the Conservatives refused to implement it in 2015 when they were governing alone, and they preferred big tax cuts for the big banks rather than investing in our care. So we've had the opportunity in the past to solve this. Liberal Democrats have championed it in the past, and we're going to keep championing it until they listen, until they make the reforms which would transform the lives of millions of our fellow citizens.
Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, has outlined various reviews underway into social care. But what more should the government be doing to try and speed up that process?
Well, they have said they're going to set up a commission into social care, and they tell us it's going to be cross-party, and we welcome that because we'd argued for that. But I'm afraid they've set a timetable which is just not acceptable. They said it's going to take at least 3 years. I'm afraid we can't wait. We believe this can be done this year so we can implement the changes that people need. And it's crucial for those people who need care and their families and their loved ones. It's also crucial for the NHS, okay, because without reforming social care, you'll never sort out the problems in our health service. And so I'm sort of can't understand why Labour, who promised change, are refusing to implement it at the pace that people expected. It could be done, but we don't seem to have the political will in number 10 to do it. I've asked the Prime Minister 3 weeks in a row about this, trying to urge him to change his mind, and we'll keep doing that. We'll keep putting the pressure. The Conservatives are silent on it, of course, because they created the mess. They've got no ideas. We had costly solutions at the last election. We put them forward. You remember, Kay, we put health and care right at the centre of our election manifesto. We're going to keep campaigning on that to get the reforms that millions of people need.
Sure. While we've got you more generally, what do you want to hear from the Chancellor today?
Well, she's got to make this growth speech. They've seen it trailed, and we do need growth in our economy to get the jobs that people need, to get the improving living standards, increases in pay, and also the money for our public service. So growth is absolutely critical, so there's no debate about that. I'm slightly worried, well, more than slightly worried, that the growth they're talking about won't happen for quite some time, and we need growth now. And we're calling for the government to go for the option that's on the table, much better trading relations with our European partners. The Conservatives put up barriers to trade. They made it more costly, more delays. And that's really hurt our economy. It's hurt small and medium-sized businesses trying to export to Europe. And the government could get rid of some of those very quickly. I made a speech recently calling for a new UK EU customs union, which would go a big way to solving this problem. It could be done within the next few years, and it would unlock a whole set of economic opportunities here and now. So I think the government have got to take more action with this European opportunity that Liberal Democrats are championing.
Are you a third runway denier?
No, I think there's real problems with the third runway proposal. If you look at what's happened over the years, both Conservative and Labour parties have changed their position, partly because they're not sure whether it will bring the growth and realising that if it brings growth, it may take quite some time. So Liberal Democrats want to make sure we're taking measures to grow our economy now. And that's why we put such a big emphasis on getting rid of the barriers and the costs and the bureaucracy that the Conservatives introduced for our traders.
OK, good to see you as always. Thanks for taking the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mari?
Okay. It was interesting what Davey was saying, just on social care for a moment. And I know it's not the topic of the day, but the Lib Dems have been campaigning on social care for a very, very long time.
They have.
And one thing, you know, whoever you vote for, that I think everybody can agree on, is without some level of improvement in social care, in terms of the fact that people are being essentially bed blocking in the NHS, in hospitals, we really are not going to be able to improve NHS services, especially around A&E, if we don't do something about social care, and this will continue to happen. So I think Ed Davey, we all know Ed Davey is right on social care. Something needs to happen. The difficulty is it's very, very expensive. And also, as he was pointing out, NHS services are under pressure because of social care, and social care has just had another blow because of the NI hike as well. So that was just a side note, because we know that the Lib Dems always campaign on social care, so I just wanted to mention that. But on growth and on Rachel Reeves' speech, he was very sceptical about Heathrow, wasn't he? He's not in favour of the expansion of Heathrow. He was talking about the fact that, you know, essentially these things are going to take time and the growth is going to come in the long-term future. And what he's saying is we need growth now. Now, you could see that one way or another. You could see that as he's absolutely right, we need growth as soon as possible, and that will help people's living standards now, yes. However, politicians are often criticised for always thinking about election cycles and short-term thinking. And actually, sometimes things need to happen within a space of a decade or 2 decades. Some things happen because they take a long, long time, and then we reap the benefits in the long term. And you might not politically... Exactly. So it's interesting because at the same time, politicians are criticised for that, and therefore sometimes actually maybe it's better to do things, even if they take forever and a long time, if in the long run it does work.
OK. For now, thanks very much indeed. What else have we got?
Top stories for you this morning. Let's remind you of those. Chancellor expected to welcome Heathrow's expansion when she unveils Labour's vision for growth in a major speech this morning. Rachel Reeves also expected to focus on the development of what she calls Europe's Silicon Valley, which she says could be built between Oxford and Cambridge. Several people are feared dead, with dozens more thought to be injured following a stampede at a Hindu festival in northern India. The crush happened as people were attempting to take a holy bath in the river in the city of Prayag in Uttar Pradesh. And the Bishop of Liverpool has denied allegations of misconduct made against him by 2 women. He says he doesn't believe he did anything wrong and will comply with any investigation.
Now, 22 years after Concorde was retired, there are high hopes that air travel is about to go supersonic again. A new American aircraft has broken the sound barrier.
There we are. XB-1 is supersonic, faster than the speed of sound. We've got confirmation from the control room that she is supersonic. What a wonderful achievement.
Let's speak now to a former Concorde pilot, John Ty. Hi, John. Good to talk to you this morning. Thanks for joining us. Can there ever be another Concorde?
Absolutely, absolutely. What they achieved yesterday was a fantastic step forward, and they're now going to start work constructing Boom Overture, the airliner that will take 60 to 70 people at Mach 1.7 across the oceans once again. We haven't seen it since Concorde.
Just remind us why Concorde retired.
Concorde retired because it became far too expensive to operate. It burnt a lot of fuel and made a lot of noise. It did make a lot of money over the years for British Airways, but it became uneconomical to carry on after 2003. So what they're doing with Boom is making an aeroplane that will burn much less fuel, run on sustainable fuels, and be much cheaper to operate.
OK, and of course, I remember covering the crash shortly after it took off from Paris, and then the return to service. I think it was in the November after 9/11.
Absolutely, yes. That November 2001, Concorde did return to service, and we had another great future, another 10 years ahead of us planned. But then the atrocities in 9/11 in New York is really what was the final nail in the coffin, really. We've been in service with Concorde for an incredible 27 years. Let's not forget that. The aeroplane first flew in 1969. We hadn't even got we'd only just got colour television by then. So what they're doing with Boom here is taking the next big step forward to take supersonic passenger travel into the future.
Wasn't it Tony Benn who was involved with the initial Concorde trials?
Absolutely. He was a great supporter as a politician down in the southwest country, and was a great supporter of Concorde, and solved the discrepancy over the name, whether it should have an E on the end or not.
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
Yeah. I think if you were French, it didn't have the E, and if you were English or British, it did.
We stuck with the E, and it stands for excellence, ECOS. It stood for lots of things, and so it went with the E. It always has an E on it. But 27 years in service, carrying 100 people at twice the speed of sound. Concorde was one of humankind's greatest technical achievements. And of course, what we've done it before, and boom, are about to do it again, but bring it into the modern world with sustainable fuels, quieter engines, and meet our modern, quite right concerns for the environment.
Yeah, I was on that return to service flight. I sat next to Sting, just saying. When might we see this in commercial use?
OK, so what they did yesterday was a tremendous step forward. They have now flown a civilian-built aeroplane through the sound barrier. It's the first time that's happened for 22 years. And they're now they've got their factory built, and they're now going to start work on the airliner itself. And to answer your question, they're predicting about 4 years' time. That might slip, of course, these things do. But they're looking at somewhere like that. And when I talk to youngsters in an inspirational way at schools and universities, I say the very next supersonic airline pilot may well be in this room.
Great. Mach 1.7 doesn't quite have the same ring to it as Mach 2. Will you still be able to see the curvature of the Earth?
Yes, they're aiming to get to 60,000 feet with boom overture, and that's where we cruised, and we could see the curvature of the Earth on the edge of space. Yeah, Mach 1.7 is a little slower than Concorde, so our record transatlantic time of 2 hours, 52 minutes and 59 seconds from New York to Heathrow won't be beaten by a boom overture, but they'll be pretty close to it.
That's amazing. What was it like flying Concorde?
The best experience of my life. It certainly was the pinnacle of my career. I'm still pinched myself. There were only 134 of us that ever had the privilege to do it for British Airways in the 27 years the aeroplane was in service. So I still pinch myself to this day. It was fantastic.
I can't remember, was the call sign Speedbird or something like that?
Yeah, Speedbird, Concorde 1. All British Airways flights run by the call sign Speedbird, but we were Speedbird 1 going out to New York in the morning, and 2 coming back, and then 3 and 4 on the evening flights.
It's amazing that you could get to New York in less than 3 hours. Good to talk to you. Thanks very much.
It's a great pleasure, and let's all wish Boom a great success.
Absolutely that. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on.
You bet. Let's take you to Ukraine now, where thousands of criminals have chosen the battlefield over more time behind bars. Prisoners are being used to plug the country's shortage of troops. Our defence and security editor, Deborah Haynes, reports.
This Ukrainian bomb maker is self-taught. Artem modifies mortar rounds, mines and other munitions to make them more deadly.
The best bomb is one you make with your own hands, and the sound from it is good. It will fry their brains.
He's produced more than 1,000 explosives that are attached to drones and used against Russian targets. But it's dangerous work.
It's fine. I was scared the first time too. My hands were shaking. Then you get used to it. When I'm scared, I just turn away.
So is that what's the white powder?
This is TNT, which we ground in a meat grinder.
As well as making them, Artem teaches other soldiers how to put his bombs onto drones. Perhaps surprisingly, this particular group has just been released from jail. They're part of a push by Ukraine to recruit convicts for the front line to bolster depleted ranks. Ruslan was locked up for stealing a car. He says he chose to switch his cell for the battlefield because he wants to defend Ukraine. This patch is worn by a unit of about 100 criminals. Their commander says he's proud of his men despite their past. He tells us about one soldier who took out 9 Russians before being killed himself.
I forbid anyone in the brigade to say you're convicts or you're jailbirds or you're criminals. There can't be such rhetoric. They put on the uniform and took the oath. They are soldiers.
Have you had any of the people that have turned up from prison that have actually not been good and have either run away or committed more crimes?
Yes, there were. Sometimes you trust someone You get used to them over time. You believe in them, you know. But then with one action, they do something like run away.
But he says most come ready to fight, and hundreds more criminals want to sign up. These convicts are learning how to fly drones, which they'll soon be using for real. About 7,000 criminals have chosen the battlefield over time behind bars since Ukraine introduced the scheme last May.
My motivation was mainly to defend Ukraine, my family and my loved ones.
Valery had been jailed because of a car crash that killed his friend.
The feeling when you leave prison and realize that you are free again is indescribable. Freedom is, after all, freedom. It felt like I was born again.
But freedom is not free. The heavy price of war, a burden this country understands all too well. Deborah Haynes, Sky News, northeastern Ukraine.
Just before we take you to a short break, have a quick look at these new pictures showing the scale of destruction in the Pacific Palisades left by the California wildfires. More than 6,800 homes in the glamorous beachside suburb were destroyed, many of them the most expensive homes in the country. A further 1,000 were damaged. Some people may never be able to return to their smoke-damaged homes. 85 people died in the Palisades fire. While the damage bill is still being calculated, it's estimated upwards of £110 billion. Still to come on The Breakfast Show.
How old are you?
28.
Oh.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm 29.
Entertainment journalist Caroline Frost is with me next as Bridget Jones's fourth and final film premieres in London tonight.
First Minister, how are you?
Good morning. Good morning.
Nice to see you.
How are you feeling? Looking forward to getting into the parliamentary chamber.
Are you any further forward to making a decision?
No, it's an important day today.
All of the claims were in line with my parliamentary duties, so I'm making that clear to you, Connor.
He was a Scot through and through.
He was a very good politician.
Alex Salmond was controversial, he was a disruptor, but above all, he was respected.
Will you resign if you lose this week?
Again, I'm not planning to, of course, lose the vote of no confidence. I'm planning to win that vote of no confidence.
His face said it all.
My intention to stand down as party leader.
This is now a storm with deadly consequences. How are they feeling?
They're a bit scared at the minute. We've been told to evacuate.
How are you feeling?
Devastated.
Hundreds of homes were wiped out by flooding. I'm Connor Gillis, Sky's Scotland correspondent.
It was probably the darkest time in my life.
Scott is 5 years sober after a cocaine addiction left him close to death. Scotland has a shameful record, worse than England, the worst in Europe.
Why not just say you've failed? Because then you might get more respect from families who've lost loved ones.
This is where one of the UK's most prolific rapists thought he'd got away with murder. Sky News can reveal that former sex workers had told police he was sexually violent.
My Emma.
Free wherever you get your news.
It's over, isn't it?
The Americans say he is Rossi, a fraudster. This has been one of the most bizarre cases ever heard in a courtroom in this country. A dangerous murderer.
Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive Andrew Ennis after this?
She said she can forgive him, but as long as he's behind bars.
By doing the right thing, it's destroyed your life.
They terrorised me. They intimidated me.
Sky News. The full story first.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
weeknights on Sky News.
This is your chance. Tell people. Welcome to the Politics Hub.
A police force has apologised. If you want to find out about Grimsby, you come to the docks.
I'm live in Jerusalem. Are you not concerned that that could lead to all-out war?
Hello there, good evening. There are fears of an upsurge in violence. What's at stake here?
You are watching the press preview, a first look at the front pages as they arrive.
Population of the UK is predicted to grow by nearly 5 million people over the next decade, almost entirely driven by migration. Our data and forensics correspondent Tom Cheshire has this analysis.
Births are declining, society is ageing, but the British population is growing, and it's growing a lot, and there's only one reason for that: immigration. The UK is on course to have the highest migration rate in Europe. From 2022 to 2032, the population is going to go up from 67.6 million to 72.5 million, according to projections. Not because of an increase in the birth rate. We will have 6.8 million births, but we'll also have 6.8 million deaths, so they cancel each other out. The increase is all from net migration, and it's 4.9 million people over the next 10 years. Now, this shows how that looks like from now until 2032. Migration coming down from its recent highs there, but still around 340,000 people per year, according to the Office for National Statistics. Still high compared to the historical record. Compare that to the recent past, though. Well, this is what happened from 2015 up to now. You can see it was fairly low here, and these big jumps over here. But we'll bring on another dotted line. Now, this shows what the projection was when experts were making those projections back in 2014. They thought it'd be pretty steady. You can see there were these big spikes they didn't account for. Their original projections way below what they're projecting now. Sometimes they've been way off in the past. Now, these all show a similar trend to United Nations projection by country. And based on this international comparison, we will have the highest migration rate in Europe, excluding countries with tiny populations where the rate can fluctuate a lot. At the same time, though, we are an ageing population too. The share of pension-age people in the UK in 2023, that was 18%. That'll go up 1% over the next 10 years by 2047. The end of this graph, it'll be 20%. What does that mean? Well, in November, the Office for Budget Responsibility suggested that total welfare spending on pensioners this year, 2024 to 2025, that would be just over £150 billion. That is more than the day-to-day budgets of 3 government departments combined: the Home Office, Defence and Education. And pensioners will soon overtake the population share of children for the first time. So that means that the British population is growing, but it's also changing. And that is the top line, but it comes with a whole host of complicated questions for the economy and for society as a result.
Bridget Jones is back. Have a look.
In life, there are memories that will never leave us.
I like you very much, just as you are.
But sometimes, those memories are suddenly...
Bridget.
all we're left with.
Ah, Mrs. Darcy.
Mr. Wallaker. Why is your granny wearing pyjamas?
Bridget, you're a widow with 2 wonderful children. My advice to you is put your own oxygen mask on first. You just have to get laid.
Shaz is right.
Oh my God!
It's been 4 years now.
You're effectively a nun. A very, very naughty nun.
I've set you up on Tinder.
What's Tinder? Mummy! Mabel's stuck up the tree! We're going to die!
Everything all right, Mrs. Darcy?
Oh my God.
Hiya.
I've climbed a magical man tree.
Hello?
You can call me Rockstar.
Bridget Jones. But you can call her mummy.
Is that the tree Adonis? If you don't shag him, I will.
Oh, I think I just want to watch the whole movie now. Forget the news, let's just watch Bridget Jones. Is it any good, Caroline?
It is. It is. That's the good news. Isn't it fun? I was just watching that trailer. Do you remember all the hoo-ha when Renee Zellweger was cast because she was an American? And now, when we see these trailers and we see her back in these films, it's like greeting an old family friend and catching up with them, isn't it? Which I guess is the secret to the success.
Yeah.
So 1 and 2, great. Number 3,
well, 3 was a diversion, wasn't it, from the timeline? I think, as you can tell, hopefully, from the trailer, they're back. And Bridget has moved on. I mean, I hope I'm not spoiling it for too many people. Fans of Colin Firth will be both delighted to see him in the trailer, but also the story has how do I say, moved on. Yes, so there is a little bit of sadness, some grief.
He's a ghost, basically.
I wasn't going to... I didn't want to be the one responsible for that.
You've done it. So we're not going to have a fight scene then?
Well, we're not, but, I mean, Hugh Grant is as charming as ever, and I think this film probably did need one of the two of her chaps to be back, and so Daniel Cleaver makes a much-anticipated appearance. But he seems to have come good as well, so... But there are some adventures along the way, interesting to see. Inspired bit of casting there. Did you recognise Leo Woodall, who is the man of the hour with After White Lotus, One Day, prime target he's in at the moment, so clearly they cast him very well. I mean, I don't know if we are expecting this romance to win out over that very charming, elegant school teacher who appears to disapprove of her, which sounds a bit familiar.
It's interesting, actually, because there was reporting yesterday in the papers that apparently they found that the assumption that women prefer older men is false. And actually, women prefer younger men as much as men prefer younger women. So maybe Bridget Jones is going with this new trend.
Yes, right on target. Well, yes. I mean, out of anybody, he is charming. He's not a rogue, and there's a sweetness to it, which was surprising to me because I thought that they might try and replicate the Daniel Cleaver, you know, the bad boy that she couldn't quite resist against the old disapproving but comes good hero in the final reel, Mr. Darcy. I mean, Helen Fielding, the author of the books, has said that she, in her bones, is a love of Pride and Prejudice, and we all know that there were the irresistible but not too good for you types versus the sort of quieter, sort of brooding, disapproving hero.
If you've been living on the moon and you don't know anything about Bridget Jones, how would you sell it?
Oh, goodness. Well, I mean, she was the figure of her... I guess is she a distant relation of the Sex and the City gang? She's a young... She turned up in London, over 20 years ago now, as a singleton who she thought that marriage and children were going to be her only route to happiness, and she was determined to do everything she could. Do you remember? I mean, it's very dated, isn't it? And the diaries were all sort of 1471, how many times she dialed it to see who last called her, all those things that told us what era we were living in. And we've watched her grow. We've watched her find her great love, but also lose him and have children and navigate all the worlds. I mean, I don't really like the scenes where she's, I don't understand social media, because I don't think that's too realistic. I think everybody understands social media, but there's something sweet. The sweeter, I think, themes are about friendship, because all her same friends from those very first films are still with her, and that's a really strong message as well.
She was forever on a diet, wasn't she? She always started a chapter by what her weight was.
Her weight, the number of calls she missed, the number of phone calls she managed not to make to Daniel Cleaver. I mean, it was very relatable for women of a certain age. Yes, and she had a career for a bit, but now she's navigating something else, which is widowhood and motherhood.
Whereas now in 2025 she'd be logging the number of Instagram likes or friends.
Yes.
She's got that.
Yes.
I don't think she'd be on. I don't agree with the Tinder. I think she'd be more Hinge personally. I think that was a miss. But
Match.
Or Match, true.
But it's interesting, they went back, didn't they? Because, yes, she was signed up to those, but both of those encounters that they talk about happened in real life. Her two gentlemen.
Our producer's just saying he doesn't
old-fashioned
know
way,
between Tinder and Hinge.
I'll explain to you later.
Have you seen all of them?
I have seen all of them. I'm a huge
Big fan.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The moment with the blue soup, iconic.
Oh, with the string.
Do you remember that?
Yeah,
with the string. Just everything.
Yeah.
She's messy, she's clumsy, and I think the reason we love it is because she's such a mess, and she makes us feel better about ourselves because we're also really messy.
She's a girl's girl, isn't she? And in fact, it's coming out on Galentine's Day, which is February the 13th, which is about the day before Valentine's, celebrating female friendship, and that is a really strong theme in this film, which is great to see.
I'm trying to remember why it was blue soup. She tied up...
The string was blue because she couldn't find any normal cooking string, so she just used any old thing she had, and then the dye basically came out the string into the soup. And
it was to flavour the soup, wasn't it? The vegetables.
Yeah, it was so bad.
It is the world premiere tonight.
Yes.
But they've already done it in
They've had
France.
a Paris premiere. I don't know how they
about?
could do things. I don't know. Didn't she have a trip to Paris? I think there was a romantic trip to Paris. But I don't know. We do know that it's Renée Zellweger and Hugh Grant dazzling people on the red carpet. I mean, people love films like this. They come along once in an era where it's one of those ones. I'm not sure that there are many films that still make it to the cinema which are for this audience, for this demographic now. It's all the sort of the big budget stuff, and especially around award season, it's all quite worthy and sort of, you know, celebratory, but this is one for the girls.
Yeah. What did you say that movie was called? The one that everybody's going mad about, the one that's 3.5 hours long?
The
Brutalist?
Brutalist,
yeah.
The Brutalist.
Yeah.
Have a loo break before you go, that's
really?
all I say.
Isn't there an interval?
There is, but it still feels quite long.
interval in a film?
It was 3 hours 40.
Yeah.
That's quite cool to be fair.
Yeah. The Times did a piece earlier on in the week. I don't know if you saw things you could do while you were watching. You could have a knee replacement. You could go to the International Space Station. All these things you can do.
Fly to New York on the new jet.
That's also a very good point. A very good point. Today, by the way, everybody, is the first new moon of the lunar calendar, otherwise known as the Chinese New Year. It's just over 2 weeks of celebration as the Year of the Snake begins. Before the festivities even started, crowds flocked to Hong Kong's biggest Lunar New Year flower market. The tradition there is to go shopping for flowers to decorate your home at the Lunar New Year, with orchids, daffodils, plum blossom, whatever that is, bushes of small oranges being just some of the flowers available. Elsewhere in the region, the Baon Temple in Taipei, sticking to the tradition, struck its bell 108 times in order to chase away the 108 troubles of life. I think there are more than that.
I was going to say, I need more than 108 rings of that bell.
What are you, Chinese?
I'm the dog.
You're a dog?
No idea.
OK. I won't ask you what you are.
I'll find out.
Apparently. It's like Googled rapidly. I'm a horse.
Are you?
What are you?
I'm a rat.
the great survivor.
The rat is the one that won the race, but it cheated. It went across the water on the top of the ox.
How do you feel about
that? As they got off, he ran to them. Hey, a win's a win, come on. It's good to see you. Thanks very much indeed, Caroline. Looking forward to seeing the movie. World premiere tonight. Coming up, we have all today's top stories for you here on Sky News, including that very big speech from the Chancellor just after 10 o'clock. We'll cover that for you here on Sky. See you in just a second. Do you hope so?
I saw police being forceful, pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests. Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support.
Free, wherever you get your news. The people here know that worse storms may well be on their way. I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles.
Morning, everybody. It's 8 o'clock coming up on the programme for you. Labour's plan for takeoff. Rachel Reeves expected to back the expansion of Heathrow.
Well, the Chancellor reveals her vision for growth in a major speech just after 10 o'clock this morning. We'll speak to the Business Secretary in just a moment.
And after Just Up Oil disrupted a West End performance of The Tempest, we'll be debating the prison sentences handed down to climate change protesters.
It's Wednesday, the 29th of January. The Chancellor says she's ready for a fight with plans for bigger airports, rail and road improvements and thousands of new homes. Dozens of people have died in a stampede at a religious festival in India. Could a simple blood test help diagnose dementia and offer hope to millions? Back to the future. 22 years after Concorde soared through the skies, a new supersonic jet breaks the sound barrier.
Oh my God. I've climbed a magical man tree. Hello.
You can call me Rockstar.
Bridget Jones.
But you can call Hammer.
And the nation's favourite scrappy heroine is back. The new Bridget Jones movie premieres in Leicester Square this evening. Big speech from Rachel Reeves this morning. Let's listen to your report and come back to you.
Labour's plan for takeoff. The Chancellor Rachel Reeves is expected to welcome Heathrow's expansion when she unveils Labour's vision for growth in a major speech this morning. She'll also reveal plans to create Europe's Silicon Valley between Oxford and Cambridge, with a blueprint to improve infrastructure across the region.
It's great that the Chancellor is focusing on growth in a key part of the UK, Oxford and Cambridge. It's the home to many UK life science companies, and providing the infrastructure to support the growth of those companies through transport announcements and water announcements will give a real boost to our sector.
Plans to redevelop the area around Manchester United's Old Trafford Stadium and expand Gatwick and Luton airports could also be confirmed in the speech. Sir Keir Starmer said the wider plans would kick down the barriers to building, clear out regulatory weeds and allow a new era of British growth to bloom.
What I want to see from the Chancellor's speech today is her really focusing on economic growth. It is a really difficult time for businesses at the moment. They are hurting. They're going to have significant national insurance tax increases in just a couple of weeks at the beginning of April. So we really want to see actions to mitigate against that and give them opportunities to grow.
Despite the government's strong words, it will take time, possibly decades, to get spades in the ground for some projects. And the Conservatives say the biggest barrier to growth is the Chancellor herself and what they call a job-destroying budget.
Business Secretary joining us now. Good morning, Mr. Reynolds. How are you planning to kickstart the economy?
Good morning. Well, look, what you'll hear from the Chancellor today is that the government's plan for change is about that ambition to improve living standards in every part of the UK, and specifically the kind of decisions everyone knows the UK has needed to make on some key infrastructure projects for a long time, that other governments haven't been able to deliver upon. This government's got the determination, it's got the resolve to make the difference and to make them happen, and that we do not accept the kind of tepid national decline of the last few years. We are ambitious for the future. We're going to make it happen. Some specifics from the Chancellor that she will announce, but a real sense, I believe, of optimism, dynamism about the future of the British economy and the living standards of everyone in the UK.
Further, faster, green shoots, kickstart the economy, rather change the tone from we're all going to hell in a handcart. How are you going to measure success?
Well, we'll measure success if people are better off, if their real disposable income is better. I mean, I feel, Kay, I'm always a pretty optimistic person when I talk to you on this morning round. But look, there are things that we should be optimistic about. Wages are rising, inflation's coming down, business investment's actually at a 19-year high. We have had our growth forecast for this year revised upwards. We're going to be the fastest growing major European economy for the next 2 years. But we want more. It's not enough. We've got to be ambitious for the future. The world is a competitive one, and what's happening in the US is all part of that as well. And I believe if people can see there's a government that's willing to tackle difficult things, deliver on things that have been too difficult in the past. That generates in itself the kind of optimism, dynamism that we need.
Thing that's growing fast is our population, up 7.3%, projected to be by 2032. When will we see these first infrastructure projects coming to fruition?
Well, they depend on which they are. Housing is relatively easy to deliver than some of the big rail and other announcements that might be part of the Chancellor's speech today. But look, the kind of thing you're talking about, the pressures that we face as a country. By the way, immigration's got to come down, but I think that still allows for a greater degree of highly skilled people coming in the sectors that we need, as we always would expect. It means the agenda the government's got, it's even more important. We've got to go further and faster on it. What really counts is not just how big your economy is based on population growth, but how big it is per person, per capita, what that really means for living standards. And that is what the government is committed to. We want real household disposable income for everyone in the country to be growing.
That was a better body swerve than the Wigan Rugby League front row. You almost said Heathrow, and then you stopped yourself.
Well, look, I'm not going to preempt what my colleague, the Chancellor, will say, but there's a whole part of what this country needs to do that hasn't been done in the past. I mean, look, I'm in Oxfordshire today, right? A brilliant, dynamic part of the UK economy. Biggest thing holding back what we need to happen in this part of the world is water infrastructure, right? We haven't built a reservoir since 1992. I just don't accept that we can't tackle these issues. I don't accept we've got to go on as we have done. I think we were elected to deliver upon change. That's what my constituents and people around the UK told me. We are going to do that. And part of that is the set of announcements, the determination, the resolve that will be on display from the Chancellor today.
Can your drive for growth be compatible with your net zero plans?
Yes, absolutely.
How?
I mean, the big growth opportunity around the world is in climate, look, the fact that we've had as a country, I think, 3 times the level of inward investment into renewable energy than any comparable European nation. So the two things go hand in hand. If we weren't ambitious on climate, we'd be missing out on growth. And equally, if we haven't got a strong economy, it becomes harder to tackle those things. So I do think the two things go hand in hand together. I think we've got some things in the UK, particularly around offshore energy potential, that other countries don't have. And it means it's so important to keep those two things together. And the whole cabinet supports that and is right behind that agenda. If I was not ambitious on climate, I wouldn't be ambitious as a business secretary for the economy, for trade, for growth in every part of the UK.
How much public money is going into the development of the old Trafford site?
Well, look, the key thing that we're announcing today is the resolve of the government to work with the Mayor, Andy Burnham, to make that happen. The kind of things we're interested in as a government is obviously not the sporting side of that, but the housing, the infrastructure, the things that will enable that. It will contribute to our housing target in particular. But again, what we've been short of in the UK, and look, there's a whole range of financial tools from this new government, like the National Wealth Fund, to work with the private sector on these projects. The real thing that's been missing is resolve, is political will, is a desire to get these things done, to say, look, we're listening to different voices on this, but fundamentally, we are the elected government, we've got a mandate, we're going to deliver upon that. I genuinely worry, Kay, that people are losing faith that governments around the world can deliver on the things that will make a difference to them. That's what we've got to show. And what you again will hear from the Chancellor is that unequivocal commitment that we can do the things that will make everyone in this country better off, make a real difference to them.
And in answer to my question?
Look, I think there's a specific sum of money in terms of those plans around it, but we stand ready as a government with the financial tools available to partner with the private sector to deliver the kind of regeneration opportunities that we're looking to deliver upon in every part of the UK.
So you will spend public money on the redevelopment of Old Trafford site?
We are willing to partner with the private sector, with the Mayor, to deliver the kind of changes. That's not to, as I say, any kind of sporting element to it, but in kinds of, often it's about infrastructure, it's about transport infrastructure that enables that private money to come in and do the kind of things that we want to see to deliver upon our housing targets. The same as we would be interested in doing in any part of the country. So look, what we are saying is we're going to give the green light to the Mayor to work with him to deliver on a project of this kind. And the plans, I think, are very exciting for that area. I think it will make a massive difference to the whole country, not just to Greater Manchester itself. But what we lack is political will. And this government is going to change that. It's going to deliver on that plan for change.
Are you content with some councils saying that they could increase council tax by 25%?
I've not been made aware that any council is proposing doing that. I recognise from my own local authority just how challenging things were under the Conservative years, but there was a little bit of extra help, more relief in the budget for local authorities to deliver that. I don't know any councillor who doesn't want to keep council tax as low as possible. It's a terrible situation they faced in terms of core funding for services over the last decade and a half. But I think every local councillor, whatever political party they're from, to be honest, is always conscious of the burden of council tax on households in their area, and I think they'd be very much have that in mind when they set those council tax rates.
Windsor are considering increasing their council tax by 25% to try to avoid financial collapse. Additionally, Birmingham and some other councils also considering increasing theirs, but not necessarily by 25%. But certainly Windsor say that they're on the verge of issuing a Section 114 notice.
Oh, look, I'd be conscious of the fact that I'm not part of Windsor Council and don't know their specifics, but it is true to say councils, whatever their political colour, in the last decade and a half, we've seen an incredible increase in their financial vulnerability, for these Section 114 notices when they face severe financial distress, and that is of huge concern. But it comes back to the fact that if core services aren't being funded, they've built up debt, they've built up problems in that area. That's why the Chancellor had relief for councils in the last budget.
But a thought, surely, for the good people of Windsor?
I'd be incredibly concerned at the impact on any part of the country where people are facing that kind of rise. I'm not aware of what their existing council tax rates are in terms of what that increase would represent, but clearly it would be difficult for people. But again, that is why, to be frank, when it comes to councils, local government or the health service or education, we are only going to get the improvements that we need unless the economy is performing more strongly. What today is about is that result from the Chancellor. Those announcements are about a clear way forward to deliver on a change, not accepting the performance of the last decade and a half. And until we have that better, stronger performance, we can talk about councils, health service, the judicial system, prisons. The pressures are evident, but solving them requires a stronger economy. That's why the plan for change has growth at the heart of it.
OK, good luck today. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Let's speak to the Shadow Financial Secretary, Gareth Davies, joining us now. Let's pick up where we just left off there. Some suggestions that Windsor Council is considering something like a 25% increase in council tax.
Gosh, yeah, more tax, more burden on working people and people across the country at a time when the government nationally are obviously increasing taxes on businesses, which then will feed through to employees. So, yeah, we've got a situation in this country at the moment where tax is too high.
The government is being very upbeat at the moment. They've certainly changed their tone further and faster and green routes. What are you hoping to hear from the Chancellor today?
Yeah, it's good. It's about time. You remember they talked down our economy for quite some time upon coming on to office, and it's spooked the market. So it's good that we're hearing the positivity from the Prime Minister. I think he's even trying to be Margaret Thatcher, apparently. So that's positive because the fundamentals of our country are that this is a great place to invest, set up a business and grow. But unfortunately, we have a situation where this government has created an environment which is hostile to investment at the moment, has reduced confidence in our economy and is increasing costs for businesses. And that's what they need to address. In terms of the announcements today, obviously we will support anything that will help us grow our economy and tackle regulation. That's really important. But I would just point out that you can't have pro-growth deregulation at the same time as anti-growth taxation, and the two will cancel each other out, and that's what businesses are telling them.
So you're in favour of the Oxford-Cambridge Growth Corridor, or Europe's Silicon Valley, as it's been nicknamed?
Yeah, well, the funny thing about all of these announcements, and we'll see what they do announce, is we were talking about the Oxford-Cambridge Arc in 2021 and putting investment to it. And so, well, we were investing in Cambridge and we were investing in Oxford.
But then you scrapped it, right?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not entirely sure of the detail on that point, but I think we did make significant investments in Cambridge and Oxford, and the businesses that exist there, such as life sciences and innovative technology companies. But look, this is a way of me saying this is a good thing. We want them to carry on the good things that we did in government. We want them to carry that on, because the key thing for this country at the moment is that we grow the economy. That's how we're going to pay for public services. That's how we're going to attract more and more investment and make us more competitive on the world stage. That is an important thing. But as I say, the environment at the moment is that we have taxes on businesses that are too high, and meaning that they are having to cut the workforce and not expand, and that's what they need to tackle as well.
But to go back to the point, you came up, as when you were a government in 2021, you came up with the idea of this Europe's Silicon Valley, and then you scrapped it in 2022. That's not very growth-friendly, is it?
No, that's not. Look, Jeremy Hunt, as Chancellor of the Exchequer, constantly said he wanted the UK to be the Silicon Valley of Europe. In fact, he got a lot of...
Why did you scrap it then?
People made fun of him for that. But, well, we invested in life sciences. We had a massive life sciences package. The budget in 2024, the autumn statement in 2023 was a pro-growth package that helps businesses to innovate, to expand, to scale up, and to attract more investors. And that's what we were focused on, unlocking more pension fund assets, reducing tax. Those are the things that we were focused on to grow Oxford and Cambridge. But we also had an agenda which wanted to see growth across the United Kingdom, including in the north of England, and that's key too.
The population is likely to increase by 7.3% before on or about 2032. How much do you have to take responsibility for that as the previous government?
The first thing to say is that these projections, I think 10 million people, that is shocking, it's unacceptable, and that we need to act. This government needs to act, and we need to support any measures that can tackle that. We have to have a situation in this country where we have a legally binding cap. We did have a cap previously, but it wasn't legally binding, and I accept that some of this migration, of course, is attributable over the last few years, and we do take responsibility for that. In Rishi Sunak's administration, he introduced a number of measures, for example, on dependents for student visas, for example, bringing over dependents. That would cut hundreds of thousands of migrants coming into this country. And so whatever the government can do to tackle this, I think would be a positive measure. But there's a broader issue here, which is, as a country, I think we have become too dependent on low-skilled mass migration, when at the same time we have about 9 million people who are economically inactive, people in this country already. And so what I would like to see, and what we did work on in government, is to boost workforce participation, to bring in more people to our workforce who are out of work, who can work. And that, for me, that's a key priority.
But am I not right in saying there's only about 1 million jobs available?
Well, I don't know what the exact figure of vacancies are, but this comes back to economic growth. If you have an environment where businesses can invest and grow, more jobs will be created. And so it all has to work together.
And free chocolate on Fridays as well, I'm sure. A YouGov poll has put reform once again ahead of you lot.
Well, polls will come and go, as you know, and we're quite a while
I
from
said
the
to
next
the team
election.
this morning, that's exactly what he'll say.
They do. I'm afraid they do come and go, and they change frequently. And we are very focused on, first of all, recognising that we did have a big loss at the last election, and we lost millions of votes to reform. We want to get them back. We're going to do that by reflecting on that loss, rebuilding trust, and having a platform by the next election that reflects what people really care about in this country, which is the fact that they're paying too much tax, that they want efficient, good working public services, and they want to see growth in all of their communities wherever they are in the United Kingdom. That's the proposition that we'll have. That's what we'll be able to deliver in government. And, then the polls will change.
Yeah, but Generation Z, they want to go further right. Apparently that's where their politics are going. So why don't you cosy up to reform?
We do need to address the fact that younger people need to have a better stake in our economy. They want to own a home, and we need to have a proposition for them which makes them feel that they have a future in this country.
Cozy up to reform.
And they have a stake. We are the party that will deliver that for them in a government. We are the official opposition. I'm confident that the Conservatives can win the next election if we have a proposition for young, old people all over the country connected to their values that we share, actually. Values that say we want to push people up who want to succeed, not pull them down when they do succeed. That's what Labour are doing to them.
And a final thought, just before I let you go, just hearing from the Business Secretary, he was hinting that there will be government money filtered into the Old Trafford redevelopment Not going to feel great about that if you're a City fan, but what do you think?
Well, I think this was already, I'm not all over the detail on this, but I'm pretty sure work had already started on Old Trafford and there was a consultation and review of it. And so I think this is one of those measures where it has been taken forward by Labour. And if that's the case, I think, broadly we can support that.
OK, who is your team?
I'm not going to say.
Go on, tell me.
Well, technically, I was grown up as a Manchester United fan. My family are from Manchester and I had no choice, but I've become a bit more optimistic about other teams' prospects since then.
Oh, that's a nice way of putting it. It's good to see you. Thanks very much indeed. Thanks a lot. So we were speaking to the Business Secretary a few moments ago, and he was talking to us in more detail about what we're likely to hear from Rachel Reeves a little bit later on. Don't forget, of course, that speech from Rachel Reeves is at 5 minutes past 10 or thereabouts today. He really wouldn't say whether or not Heathrow was going to be part of that, but he almost told us, didn't he?
He tried. He tried to say it with his eyes.
Yeah, he did.
I mean, Johnny Reynolds was really trying to kind of big up the project, big up Rachel Reeves and her plans, really, wasn't he? And to an extent, try and kind of push back on some of your questioning about whether these things are achievable and how long they're going to take.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting line when he said to you, building houses is way easier than rail infrastructure projects. I'm thinking to myself, well, I think you should tell that to all the previous successive governments that have tried and failed to meet all of their housing targets. So I think that was a slight exaggeration
there. Fortune there, because they're going to build, what, 1.5 million?
1.5 million,
in
apparently.
5 years?
Yeah, so let's see how that goes, and then we can replay that clip to him in about 4 years.
Back to haunt him.
But that was a fascinating line to come out of him. And also, when you were asking him about the immigration rates that we had yesterday, the data that was published by the ONS, he said, we need highly skilled people to come into this country and essentially to help those infrastructure projects actually get off the ground and happen. However, during the election, Labour's rhetoric around immigration and work was a lot based on actually reskilling our own population, upskilling our own population, and filling those employment gaps through UK citizens rather than immigration. So I found it quite interesting that he kind of quite openly just said, we need to get the high-skilled immigrants in here to build these infrastructure projects, when simultaneously in the election, the focus was supposedly a lot more on upskilling the population. So that doesn't seem to kind of quite chime together. But very interesting on that. And then, obviously, council tax. Everybody cares about council tax. And if council taxes are going up, like you say, in places like Windsor, Birmingham and other councils that are really, really struggling, especially in areas where there's already high deprivation and then the council tax goes up again, that is really going to clobber people who potentially really haven't got the cash. So it's a really important issue.
Sure. I wonder what the council tax bill is for Windsor Castle. Maybe they don't pay, I don't know.
I don't think they pay.
I don't know. You've got a thought on that?
I'm sorry, I was distracted by producer Andrew for a second then.
OK. Windsor Castle, do you think they pay council tax?
I'm going to say no, because the money would then go back round to the Sovereign Fund and then back round. It would be some weird accounting, wouldn't it? So I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no council tax.
Do the Royals pay council tax?
Also, they'd have a lot of bins.
That's true.
A lot of bins.
Yeah. Don't live in Bristol. They're trying to potentially do it every month in Bristol. Yeah,
it's the papers today, isn't it?
They're doing a consultation at the moment about that, every 3 weeks or every 4 weeks for your black bin, which is crazy. But
you know that the king would recycle, though, don't you?
Oh, good heavens, yeah. He'd have a composting loo if he had a chance.
What else?
So the day's other top stories for you now. We're going to turn our attention to India. At least 15 people have died and many more have been injured in a stampede at a religious festival in northern India. Neville Lazarus is here to tell us more. Neville, what's the latest?
Well, at the moment, the situation seems to be under control in some of the areas of where this incident took place. It happened between 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and a surge of crowds, over hundreds of thousands of them, surged towards a very sliver piece of land called the Triveni Sangam. This is the confluence of the river, the holy river Ganga and Yamuna, which is sacred, where people would want to take a dip if they come for these big celebrations. But there was a lack of crowd control, lack of personnel, making sure that everyone has distributed around the place, but that did not happen. Then there was a stampede, people trampled over each other, And then there was this, we don't know the number of deaths at the moment, but there are some serious injuries at this big mega festival in India, which is an estimate 400 people are supposed to come to visit it in the next 45 days.
Neville, appreciate the update. Thank you so much. Here in the UK, the Bishop of Liverpool has denied allegations of misconduct made against him by 2 women. In a statement after Channel 4 first reported the claims, the Right Reverend Dr John Perambalith said that he consistently denied them and had complied with any church investigation. Former Labour MP and Minister Lord Peter Mandelson is expected to be confirmed as the UK's new ambassador to the United States. Reports suggest that the role still has to be formally signed off by President Donald Trump, but agreement is expected. And 22 years after Concorde made its last flight, an American-made passenger jet has broken the sound barrier. The company behind the XB-1 says they hope to resume commercial supersonic flights within the next decade. That could cut journey time from London to New York to 3.5 hours.
I have an answer about Windsor Castle.
Ah, yes.
Do you think Windsor Castle pay taxes?
Oh, I'm going to say yes.
Right. Well, am
I right? Or...
You're half right.
OK.
The castle itself, any royal palace does not. Any residents of a monarch, they don't pay. They're exempt from council tax and business rates. But the Royal College Trust, visitor attraction shops, catering services, they do all pay taxes.
So if you're royal, no. Royal adjacent, yes.
There you go.
Right, OK.
That's exactly right. Morning, how are you?
Good morning,
Tell me what's going on with Strictly.
OK, so Wyn Evans, the voice of the Go Compare advert, star of Strictly Come Dancing, has said that he is stepping back from his role, so his BBC Radio presenting gig, and also from the Strictly Come Dancing tour, because of what he describes, these are his words, his inappropriate actions. Now, this comes after a report from the Mail on Sunday a couple of days ago, which shows him making an inappropriate comment to a woman, and this was at the start, at the show's launch. Now, in a statement, he has said the following: "I'm deeply sorry for the pain my inappropriate actions have caused and plan to take this time for self-reflection," saying that he is now going to prioritise his well-being. Now, in a show of solidarity, his professional dance partner, Katia Jones, reposted the statement, adding that let's show some humanity and consideration, she said, and that she would miss Evans. Now, in another show of support, it was reported in the Sun newspaper that on Monday, which was Evans' 53rd birthday, his castmates gathered to celebrate his birthday at a dinner. They had a birthday cake for him, it was reported, but that he was a no-show, and that people later came to realise that it was because he had been axed, and that's what's been reported in the Sun newspaper. Now, this is something the BBC have said they will not be commenting on further. Strictly Come Dancing have said that they do not tolerate such behaviour on tour. So it really does look like we're not going to be seeing Evans on stage anytime soon on our TV screens, and definitely not on our airwaves, certainly for the foreseeable.
OK, for now, thank you. Still to come on The Breakfast Show for you here on Sky News, are prison sentences for protesters like this too harsh? We'll be debating that. Plus, a former war zone cameraman tells us about his new edible invention, hoping to help those who face famine.
Once almost lost, these denizens of the deep are back.
The problem for these whales is global warming. Water temperatures are rising.
We're worried that the animals are actually starting to starve.
Deadly and outdated. What do you think should happen to the nets?
I would like to see them go.
I'm Nicole Johnston, Sky's Asia correspondent, based here in Beijing.
A towering monument to the China dream and its demise.
From one end of this country to the other, China is littered with real estate that's falling apart.
China is facing a tsunami of the elderly.
We have to work as long as health allows, otherwise, no money.
China is under pressure to pay for the pensions of 500 million retirees. I've reported on a wide range of stories from around the world.
Mass protests forced the president to flee.
The site of the president's private swimming pool only reinforces to Sri Lankans the great divide here between rich and poor.
Aid groups say Gaza is now the world's most dangerous place to be a child.
The Israeli army has raided towns and villages all over the West Bank.
These tunnels run all over Gaza. The Gaza Strip is ridden with them. A referendum designed to unite the country has only deepened its divide.
Sydney's floodplains underwater again.
This is the third or fourth time in 18 months that their homes have gone under.
Sky News, the full story first.
It may seem like a gimmicky toy, but it is part of the global race between the United States and China for new technology. This elite engineering, designed to humour and to help us.
Mandatory evacuation, you must leave!
For many people, Harvey is far from over.
People here believe the water will be this deep for weeks.
I'm Greg Milam, and I'm Sky's Chief North of England correspondent.
Are you trying to run me over, Sir Philip?
No, go away.
Look like it, sir. Will you respond to those who made accusations, Sir Philip?
Can you go away? Sky News, the full story first.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to The Breakfast Show. Coming up, we'll debate whether the jail sentences handed to climate activists are too harsh. But first...
Headlines for you this morning. The Chancellor expected to welcome Heathrow's expansion when she unveils Labour's vision for growth. In a major speech this morning, Rachel Reeves is also expected to focus on the development of what she calls Europe's Silicon Valley, which she says could be built between Oxford and Cambridge. At least 15 people have died, with dozens more injured following a stampede at a Hindu festival in northern India. The crash happened as people were attempting to take a holy bath in the river in the city of Gareth in Uttar Pradesh. And the Bishop of Liverpool has...
There you are.
I've gone for a walk, haven't I? I can come back again.
Go on, you might as well finish
Well,
what you started.
I'll come back in shot, shall I? I'll come back to...
what happens behind the scenes at
It's
Disneyland.
a very movable feast, isn't it? And the Bishop of Liverpool has denied allegations of misconduct made against him by two women. He says he doesn't believe he did anything wrong, but will comply with any investigation.
Remember, yesterday we talked about the disruption caused by Just Stop Oil to the West End performance of The Tempest. We've also seen famous paintings vandalised, roads blocked, people's lives disrupted. But some of the perpetrators have received sentences of up to 5 years in prison. Is that too long? Let's talk about it in more detail. Danny Shaw, policing and crime commentator, former advisor to Yvette Cooper. Great. And Paul Powlesland, is that how I pronounce it? It's nice to meet you, barrister specialising in environmental cases. Danny, first of all, 5 years for disrupting traffic?
Well, I think that was a sentence handed out to Roger Hallam, who I think was the instigator behind the protests at the M25, which caused, I think, 4 days of complete sort of disruption.
It's on the Queen Elizabeth Bridge, wasn't
That's right, to the motorway around London. It meant that, for example, I think a man missed the funeral of his father. He was meant to give the eulogy. Another man missed the birth of his child. We had students who were late for their exams. A cancer patient who missed a medical appointment had to wait another 3 months before that appointment took place. That's a sort of example of the kind of disruption that was caused. I would argue that that protest, which was very carefully planned and orchestrated, that the disruption caused by that protest went beyond what I think is sort of reasonable in terms of protest. I agree with the cause that they're protesting about, and I absolutely cherish the right of people in this country to protest, but that went too far and was too disruptive, and I think the lives of people in the community were disrupted to an extent that I think was unacceptable, and the judge came to a view that 5 years was the right sentence. the sentences have to act as a deterrent as well as a punishment for breaking the law. And in my view, I think that was the right sentence. I know there are a number of appeals being heard today. I'm not saying that every single sentence is going to be upheld. There may be some changes, there may be some reductions in terms of months, but in general, I think the sentences are justified.
Well, firstly, the sentence handed out to Roger Hallam, it wasn't actually for him blocking the M25 at all. It was for attending a Zoom call in which it was organised. And I think we had to look not just at the sentences, but also for the offence they've been prosecuted for. And a lot of these prosecutions are under the new offence of statutory public nuisance that was passed by the previous government in 2022. And we have to look at, that's a very wide offence, and who isn't being prosecuted for that? The offence can be committed when you commit serious harm to the public, which can include annoyance. And we know all about all of the sewage going into our rivers. Now, I am reasonably sure that many of the water companies putting that sewage in our rivers are committing that offence, and yet they are not being prosecuted. And one has to draw the conclusion that at least some of the impetus behind the initial prosecutions is political, that this is designed to stop people protesting and to clamp down on the growing climate protests that are happening, because people are getting ever more concerned about the climate crisis that our society faces.
Well, I don't think this is designed to stop people protesting. There are protests taking place every single day of the week. Every single weekend we see protests and the police facilitating those protests. But there's a line in the sand about, you know, being able to protest. You cause some disruption perhaps to people. And then the sort of protests we saw where people are climbing up gantries on the M25, risking their own lives, risking the lives of other people. I think a police motorcyclist was hurt during the protest. There was an accident because he was trying to kind of control the protests. There's a line that was crossed in these protests, and it just can't go on every sort of couple of weeks having protests like that, which is why the sentences were harsh. Roger Hallam has got previous convictions. The planning that went into it, a judge found, was very intricate and was actually designed to cause even more disruption than was caused. I think the Zoom call that you were talking about was infiltrated by a journalist from The Sun who then reported what she discovered to police. And if that hadn't happened, I think the disruption would have been probably 10 times worse. So, I agree with the cause and I agree with the right to protest, but there have to be some lines drawn. I mean, would you agree with a protest, for example, where you blockaded a road that was leading to a hospital? Would that be OK? Would that be acceptable?
I don't think that's ever been done. That's a hypothetical. And the same thing, would you agree that if water executives are also committing this criminal offence, which is also causing serious disruptions to people around the country and personal injuries and people getting sick swimming in rivers, that they should be prosecuted, that some journalists should be infiltrating the water companies' meetings to find out if they are conspiring to commit public nuisance by allowing in sewage?
If there are offences being committed, then absolutely the police should investigate and prosecute them.
And isn't it funny that they're not? And they're not because there's a political imperative to get rid of these protests, because there's a realisation that if this is not tamped down, it's going to get bigger and bigger because people are getting more and more concerned by the climate crisis.
I don't think this is a political decision being made by law enforcement. This is a decision being made about disrupting the life of the community, costing hundreds of thousands of pounds, £1 million, I think, in policing costs for the Met Police alone for those protests. It's about the balance that you strike in terms of protests and what's allowed and what isn't allowed.
And what about the disruption from climate change we're already seeing? You told those stories about people who are disrupted, which is bad, disrupted from their lives, but that is happening ever more from the results of climate change that we are seeing in this country, from flooding to storms. Where are their stories about the disruption to their lives? And where is the government's action to protect them? Because the government
is not... Well, that's a question for the government. That's not a question for the judiciary and for the courts about the sentences that are imposed. That's a different question. I mean, you're absolutely right to raise the issues about climate change, and there are all sorts of ways that you can do that through MPs, through campaigns, through protests, but that's a different question from allowing people to protest, but also drawing the line that says, actually, you can't cause that much disruption, and if you do, and you do it repeatedly, then you're going to get tough sentences. That's a question for the judiciary.
And what's interesting here as well is that there are increasing numbers of cases that show that the British people, when the media is not intervening and demonising these protesters, they are agreeing with a lot of these protests, because we're seeing more and more cases where these cases go before juries and juries acquit people accused of climate protest and disruption.
In these cases, I think most of the people were convicted.
Well, they all were, so they wouldn't have got sentenced, they weren't convicted. But there are many, many growing examples of juries acquitting people when they're actually told the science of climate change, told the crisis that our society faces, what I believe is the greatest crisis in the history of our society. When they find that out, they're acquitting. So I think a lot of the time the British people are actually are agreeing that these protests are justified.
Well, where juries make the decision that they don't feel that that the conviction is justified and they acquit, that's absolutely their right to do that. That's why we've got right trial by jury.
Sorry?
Doesn't that show that the justice system...
Well, the problem is in a lot of cases the judges are withdrawing the defences that climate protesters can rely on. So there's a defence called necessity. So if there's a burning building and you smash the door down to go and rescue someone inside the building, you're not going to get convicted for criminal damage for the door. But the judges are withdrawing that for climate protests and saying, yes, even if you are trying to draw attention to the greatest crisis that our society has ever faced, we're not going to allow you to use that defence. And so a lot of the time, juries have sort of no defence to use to acquit people. But even when they don't have that, a lot of them are acquitting them anyway, almost in the face of what the judge is telling them. And I think that's super interesting, is when ordinary people hear about the climate crisis and what it means for our society, they look at the actions of these people and say, actually, no, these actions are justified, given what we face.
I think when ordinary people were caught up in the protests that we saw around the M25, they felt very, very angry indeed. And if you speak to some of those and you read some of the accounts of the disruption that was caused, I think they felt that it had gone too far, even if they agreed with the cause. And I think a lot of the protesters who you represent and so on would probably even acknowledge that the cause possibly has been damaged by the extent of some of these protests, which were just, which were a step too far.
Final thought, Paul?
Well, on that point of the media, I wonder how society might react differently if, we hear all these stories about people being disrupted, which happens, and the media deals with all of them in great detail. How would it be if the media did the same for people who were disrupted from the climate crisis, who've had their lives torn apart by it? And we heard about that in detail every day, what's going on around the world right now. If the media honed in on that in the same detail they do from disruption from climate protests, I think society might look at those protests differently.
I think we've seen lots of examples of that. We've seen the fires in the United States, wall-to-wall coverage of that. I think people are very aware of the dangers of climate change. The question is, what are the limits of protest? And I think we have seen from the sentences that those limits were breached. And I would be very surprised if the Court of Appeal, it might change a couple of the sentences here and there, but I think overall I will be surprised if it doesn't uphold, in general, these tough sentences that were handed out.
OK, we must leave it there, gentlemen. We, the media, have given you both a platform to talk to us this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Now, let's talk about a simple blood test. Could it help diagnose early signs of dementia? Thomas Moore reports.
Could you name these animals? Could you name this one?
Stephanie struggles with her words these days.
This one's a high, I cannot say it, no, I can't say that word.
Her mum had Alzheimer's disease and doctors think she may face the same problems with thinking and processing.
I just don't remember anything. It just gone. I don't know if I could have some sort of tablets to take. If I take a tablet and that starts it and it keeps my memory keeping my brain really still, working and remembering.
Stephanie is now one of the first to take part in a new study of a simple blood test that could diagnose dementia in its early stages. The Blood Biomarker Challenge will look at a series of proteins thought to be hallmarks of different forms of the disease, including Alzheimer's. Several thousand patients will be invited to take part, with the aim of having an NHS-verified blood test within 5 years.
Just 2 in every 100 patients with Alzheimer's disease currently gets a formal diagnosis, either with a specialist brain scanner or a sample of fluid taken from their spines. The problem is, at the moment, the NHS doesn't have enough machines or trained staff, and that's why a blood test could make all the difference.
A cheap and accurate diagnostic test is all the more important now that new drugs can slow the progress of dementia. So far, they're too costly for the NHS, but more are coming.
There are a whole load of other drugs under development that are likely to come, be licensed and potentially available on the NHS over the next few years. Now, those drugs are suitable for people who have fairly early levels of memory impairment, so we need to get the diagnosis right to see if people are eligible and will benefit from those drugs.
Just under 1 million people in the UK have some form of dementia. Many wait years for a diagnosis, if they get one at all.
Dementia is the UK's biggest killer, and what we know at the moment is that many people are not getting a diagnosis. About a third of people in this country do not get a diagnosis. But the Blood Biomarker Challenge is about revolutionising the diagnostic pathway, and the blood test is a key part of that.
If you can copy this cube.
For patients like Stephanie, a proper diagnosis will help her to get support and perhaps future treatment to live well now and into the future.
I love it when you bring us good news.
It is good news. Remarkably, the way we diagnose dementia has barely changed in 2 decades. They're trying to bring it up to date because what's happening at the moment is so many people are missing out on a diagnosis to help them understand what's going on, because it is very confusing when your ability to communicate with the outside world, your understanding of the outside world just begins to erode away. And that's so sad when you see that happening. Now, if you can direct people towards these new treatments which are coming on stream, and they are, and they'll be for different kinds of dementia, you need to know what kind of dementia you have so you can get the appropriate treatment, which does keep you well for longer, that independence and living at home with your family and friends.
OK, it's good to see you. Thank you. Still to come on The Breakfast Show for you here on Sky News, the former war zone cameraman helping end famine.
First Minister, how are you?
Good morning. Good morning.
Nice to see you.
How are you feeling? Looking forward to getting into the parliamentary chamber.
Are you any further forward to making a decision?
No, it's an important day today.
All of the claims were in line with my parliamentary duties, so I'm making that clear to you, Conor.
He was a Scot through and through.
He was a very good politician.
Alex Salmond was controversial, he was a disruptor, but above all, he was respected.
Will you resign if you lose this week?
Again, I'm not planning to, of course, lose the vote of no confidence. I'm planning to win that vote of no confidence.
His face said it all.
My intention to stand down as party leader.
This is now a storm with deadly consequences. How are they feeling?
They're a bit scared at the minute.
We've been told to evacuate.
How are you feeling?
Devastated.
Hundreds of homes were wiped out by flooding. I'm Conor Gillis, Sky's Scotland correspondent.
It was probably the darkest time in my life.
Scott is 5 years sober after a cocaine addiction left him close to death.
Scotland has a shameful record. Worse than England, the worst in Europe. Why not just say you've failed? Because then you might get more respect from families who've lost loved ones.
This is where one of the UK's most prolific rapists thought he'd got away with murder.
Sky News can reveal that former sex workers had told police he was sexually violent.
My Emma.
Free wherever you get your news.
It's over, isn't it?
The Americans say he is Rossi, a fraudster.
This has been one of the most bizarre cases ever heard in a courtroom in this country.
A dangerous murderer.
Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive Andrew Ennis after this?
She said she can forgive him, but as long as he's behind bars.
By doing the right thing, it's destroyed your life.
They terrorised me. They intimidated me.
Sky News, the full story first.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Weeknights on Sky News.
This is your chance. Tell people. Welcome to the Politics Hub.
Our police force has apologised. If you want to find out about Grimsby, you come to the docks.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Are you not concerned that that could lead to all-out war?
Hello there, good evening. There are fears of an upsurge in violence. What's at stake here?
You are watching the press preview, a first look at the front pages as they arrive.
Hello again, everybody. Let me introduce you to a former soldier, Pete Henderson, who was also a BBC War and Disaster Zone cameraman, an old mucker of mine. It's good to see you. Thanks for taking the time. Tell me what you've developed, Pete. It's good to see you.
So, Kay, I like to introduce myself as an out-of-focus cameraman because I travelled the world as a news cameraman for many years across conflict zones, wars, famines, disasters. And the one thing that I noticed in most of those locations were that displaced people were always scared, cold, and always hungry. And I thought, how can I actually help these hungry people? So we created a food bar that's made from dates, oats, spirulina, which is a superfood, and minerals and vitamins and amazing stuff. And it's got biodegradable packaging.
May I have a look? Thank you.
And instead of throwing 35-kilogram bags of maize out of the back of a UN plane over South Sudan, you can toss these out and it's ready to eat.
Wow. It's got a lot of fat in it and a lot of dietary fibre.
So it's got 500 calories, 30 grams of protein. It's made all on renewable solar and water, so it's very good for the climate and for the environment. But most of all, it's got minerals and vitamins, which makes it a full amino acid food to eat. So it's called Eat to Grow food, E2G food. And it's most probably, as I say, one of the healthiest things somebody who's displaced could actually eat. It sustains them.
Yeah. Who have you given it to?
We've sent it to 20 countries around the world. Recently, 10,000 went into Gaza.
Oh, really? Fantastic.
Yeah. Over the last few days, we've sent 15,000 to the first responders in LA to fight the fires.
Right.
And it's a fantastic superfood to sustain you.
Who pays for it?
It's a great business model because you at home could give up a cup of coffee, go onto our app, which is called Track Your Impact. It's available in App Store and Google Store. Download the app, and for the cost of a cup of coffee, you can send a food bar to Ukraine. And it's amazing. You can track your impact. We'll send you an email saying your money's been received, the food's out for delivery. It's like Deliveroo. You'll get an email saying it's been delivered, even with pictures showing the actual delivery and a Google map showing exactly where it's delivered to.
How many have you distributed?
So we've sent 30,000 in the last few days, mostly to Gaza and to LA. But we're now getting ready to basically launch the app and we want to get, let's say half your viewers downloaded the app. We'd be able to send 30,000 a day to people around the world. There are 850 million people who are hungry. Can you imagine that? That's bigger than the population of the whole of Europe.
What's it taste like?
Delicious. Now, we've had 11 recipes. We have food scientists. It's very technical. We've worked with the guidelines of the World Food Programme to make sure that it's approved. It's FDA approved, so it's got all the health approvals, and it's really designed to make an impact, to make a difference. And, you know, a human being, they need 4 things. They need basically oxygen, water, sleep, and food. And that's why it's called food. It's no nonsense. It's just food. And this really saves your life and keeps you going.
And where do you make it?
We have a factory in Dubai. We can make 300,000 a day from our Dubai factory. But we're expanding now as well. We're getting a factory in the US and in other parts of the world as the social enterprise grows.
Okay. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Fantastic to see you looking so well as well. Thank you for
you
joining
so
us.
much.
Really appreciate it. Good luck.
Thanks.
Thank you. And we'll obviously mention it on Twitter so that people will be able to get involved as well. Thank you. What a great idea. Why didn't someone think of it before now? Brilliant work. Let me tell you about everybody's favourite singleton. She is back on our screens just in time for Valentine's Day.
Oh my God. I've climbed a magical man tree.
Hello.
You can call me Rockstar.
Bridget Jones. But you can call her Mummy.
Literally cannot wait to see more Bridget Jones. You just, every time you see it, you've got a big smile on your face.
I love Bridget Jones so much. I've watched her so many times. I am so excited. Oh my goodness.
No, I'm also very excited. She makes me feel better about my own life. But I guess that's the point, right? To have a character that's, you know, that relatable and for everyday women to sort of see themselves in terms of, you know, the everyday anxieties and insecurities that we might have. She absolutely embodies it. Absolutely. So, yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it.
Do men like it too?
I think they're fantastic films. I don't massively remember the plots, but I don't remember the plot of any film I've ever watched, ever. But no, they're fantastic films, and I think they're just normal, aren't they? To your point, they're kind of normalising just everyday life, rather than putting a Hollywood six-pack and abs on it.
Yeah. That gave it away that Colin Firth
A lot
dies.
of the men are pretty handsome in Bridget Jones, so are they... There's still a bit of a Hollywood spin.
Yeah, well, it still is, isn't it? But it's not it's not this kind of superhero world, which is completely inaccessible.
Did you read the books?
No, I haven't read the books, but I remember watching an interview with the author, and she shows you her original diaries, which then she turned into the books, where she logged all the things like you were saying earlier, the cigarettes, the weight, the whatever, which is really fascinating, but also slightly depressing that you would actually like write down your weight every day and the cigarettes and stuff. Oh my goodness, like the pressure.
I don't think... It's something that's probably only worse now, isn't it? Because everyone will put it on social media and share it and share it. At least kind of if it's personalised and privatised, at least it's only for yourself. Whereas I just imagine if that kind of behaviour was now in 2025, which lots of people do, share all their stats about their lives, but to the world.
It's very true. Yeah. I used to weigh myself every day, but
every day?
Yeah, but I keep forgetting to buy batteries for the scales.
That sounds like a blessing in disguise.
Haven't done it for a while, but yeah.
Wow, fair enough. But also, I don't know. I don't want to know.
You haven't got any AAA batteries, have you?
I do, but I won't bring them.
Yeah, so it's the world premiere tonight, but get this, it was the Paris premiere yesterday.
Why did they get it first?
I don't know. And how can it be the world premiere tonight if there was one yesterday? It's another premiere, isn't it? Or not even a premiere.
It's the second one.
It's the second one.
Second best, Kay.
I know. And also they should have done a blue carpet rather than a red carpet.
Why?
Because of the blue string.
Oh, of course! How did I not get that?
We're back in just a couple of minutes' time with all today's top stories, including big speech at 10 o'clock. Another big speech from the government. This time it's the Chancellor. We'll talk about that in a sec.
I saw police being forceful, pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests. Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support.
Free, wherever you get your news. The people here know that worse storms may well be on their way. I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles.
morning, everybody. It is 9 o'clock. What's going on with all this paper? You know I like a tidy desk.
I'm going old school today,
Yeah,
Kay.
got it. Labour's plan for takeoff. That's what you're going to be talking about. Rachel Reeves expected to back the expansion of Heathrow Airport.
Yes, so the Chancellor will reveal her vision for growth in the major speech at 10 o'clock, so just 1 hour to wait, and we'll bring it to you live.
And Earth's twin will speak to a scientist about the discovery of a new planet that could support human life.
A star for you. It's Wednesday, the 29th of January. The Chancellor says she's ready for a fight with plans for bigger airports, rail and road improvements and thousands of new homes.
We are ambitious for the future. We're going to make it happen. Some specifics from the Chancellor that she will announce, but a real sense, I believe, of optimism, dynamism about the future of the British economy.
Unfortunately, we have a situation where this government has created an environment which is hostile to investment at the moment, has reduced confidence in our economy and is increasing costs for businesses.
At least 15 people have died in a stampede at a religious festival in India. Could a simple blood test help diagnose dementia and offer hope to millions? Back to the future, 22 years after Concorde soared through the skies for the last time, a new supersonic jet breaks the sound barrier.
Oh my God. I've climbed a magical man tree.
Hello.
You can call me Rockstar.
Bridget Jones.
But you can call her Mummy.
And the nation's favourite scrappy heroine is back. The new Bridget Jones movie premieres in Leicester Square this very evening. Good morning. What are we expecting?
Morning, Kay. We're expecting a big speech from the Chancellor, all about her plans for growth, growth, growth.
Excellent. Have we got more?
Housing is relatively easy to deliver than some of the big rail and other announcements that might be part of the Chancellor's speech today. But look, the kind of thing you're talking about, the pressures that we face as a country. By the way, immigration's got to come down, but I think that still allows for a greater degree of highly skilled people coming in the sectors that we need, as we would expect. It means the agenda the government's got, it's even more important. We've got to go further and faster on it. What really counts is not just how big your economy is based on population growth, but how big it is per person, per capita, what that really means for living standards. And that is what the government is committed to. We want real household disposable income for everyone in the country to be growing.
Unfortunately, we have a situation where this government has created an environment which is hostile to investment at the moment, has reduced confidence in our economy and is increasing costs for businesses, and that's what they need to address. In terms of the announcements today, obviously we will support anything that will help us grow our economy and tackle regulation. That's really important. But I would just point out that you can't have pro-growth deregulation at the same time as anti-growth taxation, and the two will cancel each other out, and that's what businesses are telling them.
I'm slightly worried, though, well, more than slightly worried, that the growth they're talking about won't happen for quite some time, and we need growth now. And we're calling for the government to go for the option that's on the table, much better trading relations with our European partners. The Conservatives put up barriers to trade. They made it more costly, more delays. And that's really hurt our economy. It's hurt small and medium-sized businesses trying to export to Europe. And the government could get rid of some of those very quickly.
Changed their tune, haven't they?
They really have, Kay. Within the space of 6 months, the tone has completely flipped on its head, from the doom and gloom and the dire economic inheritance, and the kind of rhetoric was really, really depressing, to the point where, some people were arguing that actually it was affecting consumer confidence and investor confidence. And now suddenly, yeah, absolutely. And now we've got this kind of Boris Johnson-style boosterism, where everything's fantastic, everything's fast and growing, and we are the envy of the world. Exactly.
I've remembered other governments say green shoots.
Yes,
they need
exactly.
to work on that language.
Yeah, and a bizarre metaphor from the PM about Japanese knotweed as well, which is always bizarre, because to get rid of Japanese knotweed, you essentially have to kill the earth that it's growing in. So, let's not go down that road, essentially, okay? But from those interviews that you've done this morning, so first of all, Johnny Reynolds, the business secretary. You know, he was trying not to give away too many hints to you, wasn't he? But what we do know... He had that smirk on his face when you asked him about Heathrow. And he was trying to basically, defend Rachel Reeves' plans and say, this is all about growth and this is all about making sure that we've got the investment in the infrastructure in order to actually get this country back on track. The difficulty, and this is what Davey was pointing out in the interview in that clip with yourself, is that actually these things take a long time and some of these infrastructure projects are going to take potentially a decade or so. And so actually, what are we going to see in the near, short to medium future before the next election, realistically, in terms of people's living standards, the amount of money and cash that people have in their pockets? And that is harder to deliver because growth takes time and it takes big projects. But that is, to an extent, what Labour will be judged on at the next general election. So they're trying to hit the ground running with this, but nonetheless, the Tories are saying that actually there is a bit of a tension between what Gareth Davies was telling you was growth and kind of being pro-growth and anti-regulation versus being anti-regulation, anti-growth and high tax. And what he was arguing, what the Conservatives argue, is those two things are going to cancel one another out because some of the policies in the budget are the opposite of what Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves are going to talk about today. So depending on how you see it, the most important thing is the OBR forecast on the 26th of March. They will put their forecast out and that will essentially say whether they believe Rachel Reeves or not. Yeah. Exactly. And they'll say either yes, it's going to work, or they're going to say no, try again. And if they do, that could be a big body blow for Rachel Reeves.
OK. But she's got the full support of the Prime Minister for now, and she's making a big speech at 10 o'clock this morning. And, of course, you can see it live here on Sky News, chatting to Ed Conway in just a few moments' time. Before that, though, I've got some fantastic news for you. Could a simple blood test help diagnose early signs of dementia? Well, that is something that we want to discuss in a bit more detail. Sounds like it's fantastic news. Thomas is here. Tell me more.
Yeah, this is something that we really need because there are new drugs which are coming on stream now. But to get them, you need to know exactly what kind of dementia you've got to make sure it's appropriate treatment because the side effects can be quite punchy. So you need a good way of diagnosing dementia. At the moment, a third of people never get a diagnosis at all, and those that do can wait 2 years, and it's a bit of a rough and ready test, and that's why they're so excited about this blood test.
Could you name these animals? Could you name this one?
Stephanie struggles with her words these days.
This one's a high, I cannot say it, no, I can't say that word.
Her mum had Alzheimer's disease and doctors think she may face the same problems with thinking and processing.
I just don't remember anything. It just gone. I don't know if I could have some sort of tablets to take. If I take a tablet and that starts it and it keeps my memory keeping my brain really still, working and remembering.
Stephanie is now one of the first to take part in a new study of a simple blood test that could diagnose dementia in its early stages. The Blood Biomarker Challenge will look at a series of proteins thought to be hallmarks of different forms of the disease, including Alzheimer's. Several thousand patients will be invited to take part, with the aim of having an NHS-verified blood test within 5 years.
Just 2 in every 100 patients with Alzheimer's disease currently get a formal diagnosis, either with a specialist brain scanner or a sample of fluid taken from their spines. The problem is, at the moment, the NHS doesn't have enough machines or trained staff, and that's why a blood test could make all the difference.
A cheap and accurate diagnostic test is all the more important now that new drugs can slow the progress of dementia. So far, they're too costly for the NHS, but more are coming.
There are a whole load of other drugs under development that are likely to come, be licensed and potentially available on the NHS over the next few years. Now, those drugs are suitable for people who have fairly early levels of memory impairment, so we need to get the diagnosis right to see if people are eligible and will benefit from those drugs.
Just under 1 million people in the UK have some form of dementia. Many wait years for a diagnosis, if they get one at all.
Dementia is the UK's biggest killer, and what we know at the moment is that many people are not getting a diagnosis. About a third of people in this country do not get a diagnosis. But the Blood Biomarker Challenge is about revolutionising the diagnostic pathway, and the blood test is a key part of that.
If you can copy this cube.
For patients like Stephanie, a proper diagnosis will help her to get support and perhaps future treatment to live well now and into the future.
Brilliant, brilliant. When might it happen?
Well, they're saying 5 years, but it is likely to happen a lot sooner. This is a big trial. They're expecting a readout within a few years. And the idea is if you get a verified blood test, one that's proven its worth in trials like this within NHS clinics, then it's there, ready for people of all demographies who could benefit to make sure that they get the treatments as soon as they can.
Amazing. For now, thanks very much indeed. Thank you. Gareth has the latest headlines.
Yes, let's remind you of some of the day's other stories. We turn our attention to the Bishop of Liverpool, who's denied allegations of misconduct made against him by 2 women. In a statement after Channel 4 first reported the claims, the Right Reverend Dr John Perambaleth said that he consistently denied them and had complied with any church investigation. Former Labour MP and Minister Lord Peter Mandelson is expected to be confirmed as the UK's new ambassador to the United States. Reports suggest that the role still has to be formally signed off by President Trump, but agreement is expected. 22 years after Concorde made its last flight, an American-made passenger jet has broken the sound barrier. The company behind the XB-1 says they hope to resume commercial supersonic flights within the next decade. That could cut the journey time from London to New York to 3.5 hours.
Wyn Evans making the headlines again today?
Once again. So Wyn Evans, as you mentioned, he is known perhaps best for the Go Compare adverts, his iconic singing voice.
Singer,
yes. And he was also on Strictly Come Dancing very recently. He's now said that he is stepping back from his BBC presenting show and also from the Strictly Come Dancing tour because of what he describes as his inappropriate actions. Now, this comes after a report by the Mail on Sunday just some days ago, which shows Evans making inappropriate comments to a woman at the launch of the Strictly tour. Now, in a statement last night, he said, "I am deeply sorry for the pain my inappropriate actions have caused and plan to take this time for self-reflection." He also added that he is going to be stepping back to prioritise his well-being. Now, as a mark of solidarity, his professional dance partner, Katia Jones, reposted what he said, the statement on social media, writing, "Let's show some humanity and consideration," adding that she would miss Evans. In another show of support, his castmates gathered on Monday to celebrate his 53rd birthday. They had a cake and everything, but it transpired, according to the Sun newspaper, that he was a no-show. The Sun went on to say that his castmates then found out that it was because he got the axe. So now the BBC is saying that they won't be commenting on this matter any further. Strictly Come Dancing have said that they will not tolerate such behaviour on any of their tours. So it looks like we are not going to be seeing Evans on the stage, on the TV or on the airwaves anytime soon.
OK, for now. At least 15 people have died and many more have been injured in a stampede at a religious festival in northern India. Our correspondent Neville Lazarus is here to tell us more about that. Now, the worry is, I suppose, Neville, that those numbers could rise still further.
Yes, it could rise. We don't have the exact numbers of the death, but we certainly know that there have been some very serious injuries. This is according to the Chief Minister of the state, Yogi Adityanath, who spoke to reporters and said there was devotees who broke the barriers and surged towards what is called the Triveni Sangam, which is sort of this sliver of land where both the river Yamuna and the holy river Ganga converge. It is here that this ground is considered very sacred, and to have a dip out here to bathe in these waters at the convergence of these two rivers is very important for the devotees. And This happened early, very early in the morning, and there was very little crowd control with less of security and police personnel in that place, and therefore this surge of hundreds and thousands of people. The government estimates 100 million people will converge here today and tomorrow, since it's a very auspicious day. It's one of the 6 auspicious days in this 45-day celebration of this Hindu festival, which started on the 13th of January and lasts till the 26th. But it is also quite a dark spot on this mega event, which is a showcase of Prime Minister Modi and also of his party-led government in the state of Uttar Pradesh. Now, we are still awaiting the details of the number of deaths and how it all happened, but for sure it will be a sort of a dark spot in this mega event, which covers thousands of acres with over 160,000 tents. It's a pop-up tent city that has come up in Prayagraj.
And I thank you. Now have a look at these images, new pictures showing the scale of destruction in the Pacific Palisades left by the California wildfires. More than 6,800 homes in the glamorous beachside suburb were destroyed, many of them the most expensive homes in the country. A further 1,000 were damaged. 85 people died in the Palisades fire, while the damage bill is still being calculated. It's estimated at upwards of £110 billion. Still to come on The Breakfast Show for you here on Sky News, the super Earth planet found 20 light years away that could be suitable for life.
You sure you're up to this?
I'm your girl.
Mad About the Boy, the latest instalment in the Bridget Jones franchise, prepares for its world premiere.
Once almost lost, these denizens of the deep are back.
The problem for these whales is global warming. Water temperatures are rising.
We're worried that the animals are actually starting to starve.
Deadly and outdated. What do you think should happen to the net?
I would like to see them go.
I'm Nicole Johnston, Sky's Asia correspondent, based here in Beijing.
A towering monument to the China dream and its demise.
From one end of this country to the other, China is littered with real estate that's falling apart.
China is facing a tsunami of the elderly.
We have to work as long as health allows, otherwise, no money.
China is under pressure to pay for the pensions of 500 million retirees. I've reported on a wide range of stories from around the world.
Mass protests forced the president to flee.
The sight of the president's private swimming pool only reinforces to Sri Lankans the great divide here between rich and poor.
Aid groups say Gaza is now the world's most dangerous place to be a child.
The Israeli army has raided towns and villages all over the West Bank.
These tunnels run all over Gaza. The Gaza Strip is ridden with them. A referendum designed to unite the country has only deepened its divide.
Sydney's floodplains underwater again.
This is the third or fourth time in 18 months that their homes have gone under.
Sky News, the full story first. It may seem like a gimmicky toy, but it is part of the global race between the United States and China for new technology.
This elite engineering, designed to humour and to help us.
Mandatory evacuation, you must leave!
For many people, Harvey is far from over.
People here believe the water will be this deep for weeks.
I'm Greg Milam, and I'm Sky's Chief North of England correspondent.
Are you trying to run me over, Sir Philip?
No, go away.
Look like it, sir. Will you respond to those who made accusations, Sir Philip?
Can you go away? Sky News, the full story first.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to The Breakfast Show. Scientists have discovered what they're calling a super-Earth planet, which exists outside of our solar system. Sinead O'Sullivan is with us. What can you tell us about it?
Well, here to deliver breaking news from another solar system. This is really exciting for a couple of different reasons. One is that there are quite a few super-Earths, which are basically planets in different solar systems that are slightly bigger than Earth, but smaller than Neptune, which is kind of the next biggest planet from us. There are quite a few of them, but very few of them that we've managed to find so far that might kind of produce us habitable life, which is what we're kind of obsessed with on Earth, trying to find other, humans or other forms of life out there like
the planets
us.
we can go and destroy.
Well, the irony, yes, there is a certain irony in that. But yeah, this is really exciting because we found one that is only 20 light years away, which obviously seems like a really, really far distance from Earth, and it obviously is. But the next closest kind of super-Earth planet that we found that has similar characteristics to this one is 100 light years away. So the excitement here is that it's very possible that we could actually use, very large telescopes on Earth to one day even visualize and see this planet. Now, we cannot visually see this planet right now, but we can visually, if you look up at the night sky on a really clear night, we can see the star that it orbits, which is called 82, I've forgotten the name.
I can't help you, I'm afraid.
Yeah. But we can actually see that star. So this makes it kind of really interesting because one day we might be able to actually see this planet.
How do we know it's there?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Cabe. How is your gravitational dynamics?
Oh, well, this morning, not great.
So there's kind of two ways that we could, traditionally we've always found these planets because they've moved in front of their version of the sun. So it creates this shadow and we're like, oh, we can visually see that it's there. This new methodology that we're using kind of looks at the movement, the wobble of the sun or the star that it's orbiting, and calculating the movement and that wobble of the sun allows us to figure out that there is actually a planet there and how big it is. What it doesn't allow us to do is figure out what it's made of and what, if anything, might be habiting on that planet.
OK, so we can't send a spacecraft there anytime soon.
We could do. We know where it is. We could send something to there. We just haven't visually been able, we might not be able to see the spacecraft when it gets there. Yeah. It'll be a big surprise, yeah.
Well, I've got you, Sinead. Do you know about this new Concorde style aircraft?
I was hoping yes, I do. This new Concorde, it is, it's not really a new Concorde. It is a totally different aircraft. It's a US company called Boom Supersonic. A great group of engineers, and they've designed, engineered, and built what is going to be the first supersonic aircraft that is hopefully going to be commercially available soon. So lots of airlines have engaged with pre-ordering many of these, and honestly, the engineering aside, they did their first kind of Mach 1.7, I think they got yesterday test. Really exciting. I just really hope that we can start going to Australia and more exotic places out of this bad London weather on a more regular basis.
Nice, good to see you. Thanks very much indeed. Thank you. Big speech later on from the Chancellor. We've sent Ed to find out more. Hi, Ed.
Hi, Kay. Yeah, no, it is big. Growth is on the agenda, and I mean, don't whatever you do call it a relaunch, because that's not the way that the Chancellor or indeed the government wants to talk about it. But they do want to talk a lot about growth. There hasn't been much growth recently, actually. If you look back to last July when the government came in, the amount of growth that this economy has had, and when we talk about growth, we're talking about gross domestic product, the amount of income that's being generated around this country, it's basically zero. And that's actually kind of, a best case scenario. It might be a little bit negative. And so what the Chancellor wants to talk about today, and then we're going to hear a lot from her, and we'll be talking to her, is about various things that she thinks that she can do that doesn't involve spending extra money, OK? Because you had the budget in October. That was about money being spent and indeed money being raised, taxes. But this time it's about trying to do what's known as supply-side reforms. So getting rid of the friction preventing businesses from doing commerce. And that means trying to improve connections. And so we're here in Oxfordshire. One of the things that's coming back onto the agenda, it's an old project, you will all be familiar with it, is the Oxford-Cambridge Arc, or it's got various different names, but basically trying to improve transport links, including a rail link between Oxford and Cambridge. So we're in Oxfordshire to try and tell some of that story, and this is where the speech is going to be, but also new reservoirs. You've got new rail links, you've got new road links as well, and as well as that, of course, towering, shadowing over everything else, talk about new runways too. Now, these are exactly the kinds of things, if you talk to business people, if you talk to people who are focused on growth, short of the tax, cutting taxes, these are exactly the sort of things that people are keen on. There are, of course, though, a lot of provisos. It's going to take a long time for any of these projects, whether it's reservoirs or runways, to actually be constructed. So there are still lots of provisos, still lots of question marks, and we're going to put as many questions as we can to the Chancellor.
I was chatting to the business secretary earlier on, Ed, and he was saying, I was asking him about a timeline, and he said, houses we can do really quite quickly, but they want to build 1.5 million.
Yeah, and even that, I mean, like one could go through, Kate, pretty much all of these different plans and raise some really big questions about actually just how doable it is, OK? So there's a really ambitious housing target. And again, a lot of people, most people actually within business and within the wider kind of economic community would say that's a good thing. We're just not good enough at building enough homes. We've got a big population. You saw the population numbers yesterday. We've got a big population, lots of immigration. Whatever you're doing, you need to try and provide more room to accommodate. But actually making that happen, making stuff happen, is far more difficult than just setting a target. And that really is the challenge. Setting a target, whether it's for all of those homes, whether it's for the runways, Heathrow and elsewhere, whether indeed it's just for new housing or indeed for new rail links, the difficult thing is making it happen. And pretty much every government, if you look back over the course of the last kind of 20 years, they've basically all been behind the same things. Nothing that we're going to hear about here is particularly new. They've all been about trying to improve the ability of this high intellect, high technology corridor, Oxford and Cambridge, to be enhanced. They've all talked about new runways. They've all talked about new housing, new rail links as well. The difficulty is making things happen in this country is really expensive, and dealing with that means confronting a lot of planning laws, a lot of vested interests, and that takes time and effort. And whether this government is going to be better than previous governments, we'll have to wait and see. But as you were talking to the business secretary earlier about this, it's going to take a long time to work out what's happening. And right now, the mood isn't particularly optimistic. Since the budget, everyone's been quite down in the dumps, even before the budget, down in the dumps about economic confidence. And I think part of the point is, although, like I say, don't call it a relaunch, there's not the kind of thing, the words that she would use, but there is a kind of effort to try to improve confidence here and be talking about positive things rather than negative things.
Sure. Just before I let you go, really quickly, the business secretary was like Tigger this morning. I mean, there's a definite sense that they've decided to change their approach.
Yeah, I think there is, and it'll be interesting again just to see the body language for the Chancellor. I think, we're going to be pressing them on this, and I know that you pressed him on this. It does feel like the tone has shifted. And to some extent, you can look back and say that there was always going to be this plan. Start off with the bad news. That's kind of what everyone does when they come into a new job. They start off with the bad news, kitchen sink all the bad news, as they call it. And then later on, you move on to the positive stuff. But I think that pretty much, within Whitehall, people acknowledge that they went really heavy on the bad news for a long time without any of the kind of enough of the positive stuff. And I think one of the overarching questions here is, like I say, nothing that we're going to be hearing about from Rachel Reeves. Well, no, a few things will be kind of newish, but nothing here is going to be a massive surprise. New reservoirs, we know we needed them for a long time. New runways, that's been on the agenda, off the agenda, on the agenda for a long time. This link between Oxford and Cambridge, it's been around for a long time. New housing, been around for a long time. So nothing here is particularly new, raising the question, why weren't you getting on with this 6 months ago alongside all of the kind of bad news stuff about the state of the public finances? And I think that's a question that's a bit trickier to answer, given, as you say, it's going to take a long time for this stuff to be seen. But final point, really, this is the positive stuff. And a lot of business people will be looking at what the Chancellor's talking about today and saying, thank God that they are talking about building new things, getting reservoirs built, getting infrastructure around this country improved. However, there are still some big question marks about that, about energy costs, about how planning is going to actually function with that. So we will see how she judges that. But an interesting day, Kay.
That wasn't very short, Ed, was it? We'll see you just after 10. Thanks very much. I don't know what he was saying there, but we've had enough. Still to come on the... We never had enough of Ed. Still to come on The Breakfast Show, we'll hear from the former First Minister of Scotland, Humza Yousaf, on what he makes of the situation in the Middle East and how it's affected his own family. Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to The Breakfast Show. Coming up in a moment, speaking to Scotland's former First Minister, Humza Yousaf, that to come. But before that...
Our top stories for you this morning. The Chancellor is expected to welcome Heathrow's expansion when she unveils Labour's vision for growth in a major speech this morning. Rachel Reeves is also expected to focus on the development of what she calls Europe's Silicon Valley, which she says could be built between Oxford and Cambridge. At least 15 people have died, with dozens more injured following a stampede at a Hindu festival in northern India. The crash happened as people were attempting to take a holy bath in a river in the city of Prayagraj in Uttar Pradesh. And the Bishop of Liverpool has denied allegations of misconduct made against him by two women. John Perambalith says he doesn't believe he did anything wrong, but will comply with any investigation.
To the Middle East now, and the slow return of Palestinians back into Gaza. The former First Minister of Scotland, Humza Yousaf, has been a vocal critic of the UK government's response to the crisis in Gaza. Joining us now. Hello to you, Mr. Yousaf. Your view on what we've seen over the last few days?
Well, I think the images that are emanating from Gaza should haunt and shame us. We see streams of thousands of people walking back, exhausted. In fact, one elderly man dying of exhaustion on that journey, returning back to rubble that was once their homes. And that rubble, Those homes that have been destroyed because the government, this country's government and many other governments across the world are selling arms to Israel. Those are the kind of images, the ones that you are showing right now, that our children will look at in the future and will say, how on earth did you let this happen? And I'm afraid there's not an answer to that.
What more would you like the British government to do or should have done previously?
Well, I would just like the whole world, including the British government, to abide by international law. That's all really I'm asking for. I don't think it's an outrageous demand at all. And we know that there is an ICC arrest warrant out for Benjamin Netanyahu, for Yoav Gallant, and for others that have committed war crimes. And each and every single one of them should be held to account. And the fact that there is an ICC arrest warrant for Netanyahu, and yet our government still sells weapons to that country, is, to me, unbelievable, incomprehensible, and shocking. And so first and foremost, let's just abide by international law. What needs to happen next? Of course, Gaza needs to be flooded with aid. But to stop this perpetual cycle of destruction that Gaza seems to have to go through every few years, we need some meaningful progress towards a genuine two-state solution. And that requires the UK government to immediately recognise a Palestinian state in the same way that Ireland, Norway and Spain have done. You can't say that you believe in a two-state solution, but simply recognise one state.
What do you make of what Donald Trump had to say?
Well, it was the textbook definition of ethnic cleansing, to suggest that one set of people should be forcibly removed from their land, and that land then given to others, is by any definition ethnic cleansing. I think the Prime Minister and the Foreign Secretary should make it abundantly clear that they will not support any such plan, and they should call it ethnic cleansing. That's exactly what it is. But this is the world we live in. I mean, we have somebody who is giving the textbook definition of ethnic cleansing, and yet politicians are too frightened to say it because of the office the President holds, and even some media outlets, I'm afraid, are unable to say it. I mean, you've not used the term, but it is ethnic cleansing. Anybody can look up the Oxford Dictionary definition of ethnic cleansing and it would tell you what it is. So what is being suggested by Donald Trump is ethnic cleansing, and we shouldn't be afraid to call it out, regardless of how powerful he may be.
I remember after the 7th of October, your parents-in-law trapped in Gaza for some time. How are they doing now?
Well, they're pretty traumatised and probably will be for the rest of their lives. And my wife, Nadia, whose parents it is, she still has family in Gaza. Her cousin, who's originally from the north of Gaza, but is not going back. Why is she not going back? Because simply she's been told that her house no longer exists. So she has nothing to go back to. And this is, of course, not the first time. Nadia's family were originally refugees when the Nakba happened, the Great Catastrophe happened, when they were forcibly removed from their homes in 1948. So they were then made refugees. And they've now been made refugees once again. And they've had to leave Gaza once again. And they've had to leave their homes once again. And once again, their homes have been turned into rubble. And the world keeps watching. This keeps happening. In my lifetime, it's happened on many occasions. It keeps happening time and time and time again. And it's innocent people of Gaza who continue to suffer. And the world says, oh, how terrible, let's send some aid in, let's rebuild, and then only for Israel to come in and destroy it. So there has to be accountability for the horrendous war crimes that have taken place. At the very least, the UK government has to stop selling arms to a government whose head is wanted by the ICC for war crimes.
OK, good to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
To the US now, where the Trump administration has intensified its crackdown on illegal immigrants. Law enforcement agencies have been told to carry out large-scale raids on 3 cities every week. Our US correspondent James Matthews reports.
Look at Chicago. It looks a little different under Donald Trump. Go to the south side and the streets are more empty than usual. There's a reason for that. They're calling Chicago ground zero for migrant arrests, a city targeted first in Trump's deportation drive.
It's never this quiet. Usually people are always walking up and down.
In this Hispanic neighborhood, they tell the migrant story. of a community kept indoors and their streets emptied. People retreating to the shadows for fear of what they're calling here collateral arrest.
My mom, she's scared to come out, and if anything, if she does get deported and everything, it's gonna be really hard.
She's just scared to go out there. She has more anxiety going out there. It's like I was saying, that she might get picked up somewhere else from work or around where we're living.
They don't normally keep the gates shut at this migrant support centre.
We're noticing pickup trucks. They're using a lot of different cars that you can't tell whether or not they're, ICE agents, whether they're, police.
This is an open house for immigrants in the area, but immigration raids have altered the routine. Here we met Oliver. He came to America from Venezuela, has a work permit, and has been working in construction, not currently.
There are rumours about migrants, and I'm scared that they might catch me, deport me. My family depends on me.
Here in New York City this morning, we are getting the dirt bags off these streets.
This was Christine Ohm, America's new Secretary of Homeland Security. She joined a migrant raid in New York. They are expanding the map. US immigration enforcement has been publishing totals for the arrests that they're making. The figures are up on the daily average during Joe Biden's final year. It's the measure that matters in government by numbers. It is applauded by much of America, the crackdown and its choreography. Not so much in the community's centre stage. James Matthews, Sky News in Chicago.
Bridget Jones is back. Do you want to see? OK, have a look.
In life, there are memories that will never leave us.
I like you very much, just as you are.
But sometimes, those memories are suddenly...
Bridget.
All we're left with.
Tell us more.
Mr. Wallaker.
So this is the fourth film in the instalment, and the trailer kind of gives away the big, huge spoiler of it all, in that Mark Darcy, her husband, has passed away, and this is all about Bridget moving on from the biggest loss of her life and trying to live again after that, with the help of her friends and what she calls a magic man tree that she finds in the park with her kids. She starts dating again and starts going out on her normal Bridget Jones adventures all over again. Back
She
to
can't
her
stop
job.
smiling, seriously.
I love Bridget Jones. You're a huge fan here. Really?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan. My husband hates me because all I do is watch them every single year. I love them so much.
This is the thing, because when I was watching, I watched the fourth one last week. Now, I signed a very important piece of paper, so I can't actually tell too much about what happens in it. But I actually went back to... yeah, it's like so. But I went back to watch the very first one, and honestly, I didn't realise how funny it was when I was watching it the first time around. Coming back to it, honestly, it's so good. And as well, being in this industry, coming up to the age that Bridget Jones actually was in the very first film, it really hit home. I was like, okay, maybe do I need to start going on some dating apps here? Like, what's going on?
Favourite scene?
Favourite scene? Oh gosh, you're testing my memory now.
Either smashing through the window and It's Raining Men probably would be one of them.
Standouts. Waddling in the gold dress with the red cheeks, remember that?
Yeah, we've got the bunny moment as well.
Yeah.
Well, in the fight scene, they refused to have any stunt actors do it, didn't they? So that's all kind of made up as they went. It was only for going through the window did they bring any stuntmen back in to kind of smash through that window. So that's all unchoreographed. That's just the two of them being middle-class men who can't fight. You know, that's just them method acting through and through.
And Blue Soup?
Blue soup, highlight.
Do you remember the Blue Soup?
No, remind me.
She tries to make this fabulous soup. She's having a dinner party, and she's like, I'm a responsible adult, classic Bridget, and uses blue string to cook the vegetables because she couldn't find any clear, plain string, and then the whole soup is blue, and it's disgusting.
There we go, classic Bridget Jones. I have a question for Debbie, if you don't mind.
Of
so
course.
I know you've signed an important piece of paper, so you can't give us too many spoilers, but be honest. Did this live up to the other films? Because generally with sequels, I feel that they tend to get worse and worse and worse. But was that the case with this, or were you pleasantly surprised?
So this is actually, well, when I was watching the first three all over again, the first two absolutely loved. The third one did wane a little bit, and I was like,
it was pants, let's be honest.
It brings it back. It brings it back to the love of Bridget Jones from the first one. When I watched the fourth one, it's just love, and I cried about 7 or 8 times throughout. So,
did you?
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
It's in a lovely way, though.
Yeah. I'm not talking to somebody.
Diary.
Really hit home, Kate.
Write it down in a diary. Just write those feelings down in a diary.
Amazing. So we're saying it's the world premiere.
This is what's happening. In the last couple of years, we've been getting world premieres, but then you're noticing ones in Paris, then they have an LA one, they have one in New York. It's become a thing. I think Bridget Jones has to come home for the world premiere, and that's what it is that tonight.
Yeah, but they've already had the Paris one.
They've had the Paris one.
So it's not world or premiere?
Yeah, that was the entree, let's just say.
We thought it should be a blue carpet rather than a red carpet.
Yeah, I'd like that as well.
See, that would make more sense given the story there, right?
I'll ask her tonight.
Hang on a second. It's good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Still to come on The Breakfast Show for you here on Sky News. Why the Chancellor is putting Europe's Silicon Valley at the heart of the government's plan for growth. We'll look ahead to Rachel Reeves' speech next.
Once almost lost, these denizens of the deep are back.
The problem for these whales is global warming. Water temperatures are rising.
We're worried that the animals are actually starting to starve.
Deadly and outdated. What do you think should happen to the nets?
I would like to see them go.
I'm Nicole Johnston, Sky's Asia correspondent, based here in Beijing.
A towering monument to the China dream and its demise.
From one end of this country to the other, China is littered with real estate that's falling apart.
China is facing a tsunami of the elderly.
We have to work as long as health allows, otherwise, no money.
China is under pressure to pay for the pensions of 500 million retirees. I've reported on a wide range of stories from around the world.
Mass protests forced the president to flee.
The sight of the president's private swimming pool only reinforces to Sri Lankans the great divide here between rich and poor.
Aid groups say Gaza is now the world's most dangerous place to be a child.
The Israeli army has raided towns and villages all over the West Bank.
These tunnels run all over Gaza. The Gaza Strip is ridden with them. A referendum designed to unite the country has only deepened its divide.
Sydney's floodplains underwater again.
This is the 3rd or 4th time in 18 months that their homes have gone under.
Sky News, the full story first.
It may seem like a gimmicky toy, but it is part of the global race between the United States and China for new technology. This elite engineering designed to humour and to help us.
I saw police being forced or pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests.
Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support.
Free, wherever you get your news.
The people here know that worse storms may well be on their way.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles.
$1,500 movies? I don't want this flight to end.
Fly Emirates,
life better.
Hello again, everybody. Bess here. Yay! Tell us about the speech later on.
Well, it's going to be a big moment because, you know, the government made growth their defining mission, and then we had all the doom and gloom around the budget. This is an attempt now to say this is how we're going to try and grow the economy. And it is a big moment for Rachel Reeves. It's a big moment for the Prime Minister. And they're going to basically outline a load of supply-side change. That's all about deregulation in order to boost growth. And actually, Starmer...
Is it a relaunch?
You might say that. I can't possibly comment. I mean, look, in terms of a relaunch, I put this to some people in the Treasury. I was like, you're having to relaunch because it went so badly wrong last autumn with the budget and the tax rises and business not investing, 0.1% growth last month. And the argument was this isn't a relaunch in that we signalled that we were going to have to find ways to grow, but we had to lay out how we saw the economy and the inheritance from the previous government. And now this is something that's been long in the planning. But it's undoubtedly true to say that, as you know, the Chancellor's also been under a lot of pressure because of the reaction of business to the budget, people cutting jobs, pulling out of investment because of those big tax rises that she announced that were not expected, those big national insurance rises, £25 billion on business, and it has a knock-on effect. So if you like, today I think it's kind of the remedy about how do they think they can get growth. And it's all going to be around deregulation. I think the vibe that they want to get is a sense that there are going to be cranes in the sky, that we are going to get Britain building. You're going to hear a lot of this around ripping up planning bottlenecks in order to try and grow the economy through another runway at Heathrow, through a corridor between Oxford and Cambridge, a Silicon Valley, if you like, where technology companies can travel between and houses are built, around cities with stations with more building in order to try and boost the economy through investment and basically building.
It takes time, though.
It all takes time, and that's the whole point. I mean, these projects can take decades. And that's another question, which is, well, you say that you're going to do this, but where is the proof of this? And I think it goes back to what I was saying, which is if they can signal to the public that building and construction is beginning to happen, that it will give them some time. But you're right, it will take time. And at the moment, the government are deeply, deeply unpopular with Starmer, with the worst approval ratings, and the public not convinced and not feeling better off. So I think there is an immediacy in terms of they've got to show that they're doing stuff. But the problem is it is going to take time, and also there will be a lot of internal opposition. There's going to be opposition to a third runway. There will be opposition to environmental deregulation. We already had the guy that, Vince Dale, who is a Labour donor, saying this morning he's opposed to the third runway. Watch for more politicians to do that. And I think part of Rachel Reeves' message today actually will be that she wants to have the fight, that they want to have the fight. I mean, Starmer in the Times this morning, which you'll have read, is actually channeling Margaret Thatcher. He's saying, you know, we are going to deregulate. This is about supply-side reform. What former Prime Minister talked about that? It was Liz Truss. So they're actually adopting more conservative deregulatory values, if you like, in order to try and boost growth. And he says, you know, that might be surprising to you, but we've got to find a way to do it. I think, again, Kay, it's an example of them saying they're going to do something, and the question is, can they deliver it?
OK. And as far as the tone is concerned, he was like Tigger this morning, the Business Secretary. They've very much changed their tone, haven't they?
They've very much changed their tone in the sense of you won't get someone in the Treasury, I think, publicly saying this, but privately there is an admission that the doom-mongering of last autumn, in which they said it's terrible, we're going to have to raise taxes, the public finances are in a much worse position, it unnerved businesses, it made consumers feel gloomy, and actually part of economic growth as well is about the energy and the vibe, in the sense of people having confidence in the government and confidence in the decisions they're making. So what you're seeing is a complete change of tone, where I think there is an admission that they overdid the gloominess and it did actually have a material effect, and now they need to send a very different message across. And to that end, they had a business breakfast with loads of CEOs yesterday. You've got Starmer talking about deregulation. That is music to the ears of businesses that get frustrated, caught up in planning decisions and stopped by the NIMBYs. And actually, some of the things that they've talked about, Kay, I remembered covering the Theresa May government with Philip Hammond as the Chancellor, where they were trying to build around stations, and that was resisted, and they backed off around some of those plans because they had a lot of local resistance from communities. And so sometimes they did pull their punches on this stuff. And the question is, for all the talk, will Labour actually get down and dirty and have these battles? And will they succeed? But quite honestly, they don't really have another option because they cannot deliver what they have said on public services without growing the economy. They simply cannot keep taxing people more. We have the highest tax burden in over 70 years. And so the only way they can do it is through growing the economy, but it will take time. And I mean, they would argue he's got a massive majority and they don't have to have an election for 4 years. So even if it's very difficult for 1, 2, even 3 years, the gamble is, or the calculation is that towards the end of the Parliament, some of this growth will be coming through. And crucially, it's about whether or not people are feeling better off.
1.5 million homes, they've said that they're going to build in the course of this Parliament. The Business Secretary was suggesting that was an easy thing to do. He was saying, you know, we'll be delivering these houses. That's one of the easier projects.
Well, it's not an easy thing to do, and you'll know because you'll have interviewed countless business secretaries and chancellors and housing secretaries that have made big targets on house building only to not deliver them. And this is critical. I mean, 1.5 million homes, the only way they can do that is to speed up planning applications, stop blocking, and that will be the battle. And we're going to see these battles play out all around the country in the next year. And in a way, I think Labour want to have that fight because they want to demonstrate to the public that they're going to do what they need to do to get more homes built. But that is a target for Angela Rayner, who's the Deputy Prime Minister, and it's one core target within the government. And it's a hard one to deliver.
Yeah, there is nothing this woman doesn't know. She'll be taking you through.
That's very nice to say that.
It's an actual
Many would
fact.
disagree.
Just remind me, you've got an RTS award for being like the best in the business. I think she does. Rachel Reeves coming up in just a few moments' time after this short break. Do stay tuned our way, and I will see you at 7 o'clock in the morning. Do hope so.
Mandatory evacuation, you must leave!
For many people, Harvey is far from over.
People here believe the water will be this deep for weeks.
I'm Greg Milam, and I'm Sky's Chief North of England correspondent.
Are you trying to run me over, Sir Philip?
No, go away.
Look like it, sir. Will you respond to those who made accusations, Sir Philip?
Can you go away? Sky News, the full story first.